That's not. Or sorry, we're not calling it to order, we're continuing it from last Thursday. I will start with attendance. I do not see Councillor Jolly. Is she online?
No, she's not.
Okay, so we're all here except for Councillor Jolly. Hopefully she'll be able to join us soon. It was her first day on her new job, so she might be scrambling. The second thing I will say is thank you to Councillor Broadhead for taking over the chair last Thursday. It was nice to sit back and let the meeting run without my chairing. So that was awesome, and he did a great job. And the last thing I will say, and it's not part of budget, but I need to, because I just got a text message from the mayor of Morinville. They had a big fire at their hotel, and he wanted to thank City of St. Albert and the ladder truck for being there for mutual aid. So I'm not sure if Everett's online, but please make sure that your staff know that Morinville was very appreciative of that help. All right, the first thing on our agenda is public input. I have a couple of registered speakers. Cheryl Dumont from the Housing Society. Is Cheryl with us? Is she online? Okay, and then Marilyn McGreer from Vocational Pathways Association of Edmonton. Is Marilyn with us?
I'm
She's
online.
Awesome. Okay, good to know. I never know where I'm looking, screen or Marilyn, thank you for joining us. I'm going to give you your 5 minutes starting right now. I don't know if you want to turn your camera on if it is. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Yeah, can you see me okay?
Your camera.
Hi.
Great. So go ahead
Right.
whenever.
Yeah, so I just have a quick question here. Wondering about the cuts, like I know that there was that article in the Gazette a little while ago that you were proposing a 50% cuts to all the nonprofits. I guess I'm just wondering, how did you arrive at that figure, 50% as opposed to say 10%?
If that's all you really need from us right now, I can tell you that there's actually no proposed cuts at all for outside agencies and for the not-for-profits. So we did ask our staff earlier this summer to give us some ideas and suggestions on how to deal with the tax adjustment, which is quite high. At that point, we were looking at 8.2. So they put everything on the table, and that was one idea. Didn't go over very well with council, so it was dropped off the table very quickly, and so there is no cuts.
Okay, that's all my question. Thank you so much.
Good. I'm glad we can clear that up for you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we also have other registered speakers specific to outside agencies, and they're time specific for right at the beginning of our meeting. So the first one we have is the Arts and Heritage Foundation, and I saw Jen McCurdy and Ann Ramsden in the same. Yep, there they are. You guys have been here before, know the drill, so I'll let you. We have your presentation in front of us. I don't know if we're going to be able to. Are you sharing a screen? Is somebody sharing the presentation? Ann? Oh, we can't hear you. Still can't hear you. You can hear us? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, yeah, we can't hear you at all. And it looks like you're unmuted, so it's probably at your end, your microphone or something. And you know what? Why don't we'll go to the library first. And
Or can you hear us now?
oh, there we go. Perfect. Look at you guys, all smart with and techie. All right, you guys can go ahead. You got your 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you and good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity for the Arts and Heritage Foundation to present our 2023 budget to you. The AHF manage and operate the Art Gallery of St. Albert, the Museum Heritage Museum, and the Heritage Sites. We do this through a partnership agreement with the City of St. Albert, and this budget, like previous budgets, is based on the requirements of this agreement. This includes maintaining 9 historic buildings, providing arts and history, programming for schools and the community, art and history exhibitions, and managing the archives and museum collections. We also support local and regional artists and artisans through our art rental and sales program and gift shops. And we remain committed to truth and reconciliation, which is reflected in our Indigenous-led school and community art and history programs. We add value to the partnership agreement, and in 2023, we are expecting to bring in an additional $636,204 by earning revenues from our programs and successfully attracting grant funding. These revenues and grants are used to support expenses that are not covered by the city operating grant. On page 2 of our presentation, our funding request to the city for 2023 is $1,754,100, an increase of 3%, which is $51,109. During COVID-19, the AHF, in line with city recommendations, reduced our budget, and the 2023 proposed operating grant is still below our 2019 operating grant. In 2023, the AHF will no longer be receiving any COVID-19 subsidies or grants. The AHF, like other organizations, is being affected by inflation, and most noticeable, we are seeing an increase in our utilities, janitorial, security, materials, and contractors, trades for repairs and maintenance of the historic buildings. During the slowdown we experienced during COVID-19, the AHF was able to implement new systems and processes. This has resulted in efficiencies and a reduction in expenses, such as office and advertising and promotion. Before we move to the slide with our full budget for 2023, I would like to highlight a couple of recent successes. The Art Gallery and Museum were able to run a full year of in-person exhibitions and associated tours, including new public art tours. With the discovery of the graves in Kamloops and other residential schools, there has been a greater interest in the media about residential schools and the Pope's visit last summer. Many of these articles include archival photographs and images from our archives, have been used by CBC and Global. We are on the inventory of the Alberta Film Commission, and in the summer we had our first film shot at the heritage sites. We hope this will attract other filmmakers to the heritage sites to make use of our restored buildings and locations and to highlight our historic community. During COVID-19, many venues were closed and there was a shortage of meeting spaces. During the times we were able to operate, we were able to provide local nonprofits with meeting space. We will continue to make our facilities available to support other nonprofits in the community. In 2023, we are presenting a balanced budget without the use of COVID-19 subsidies or grants or the use of AHF reserves. Our proposed budget predicts our earned revenues will continue to recover, and while still not at their pre-COVID levels, our actuals for 2022 are encouraging, and the 2 main areas of growth are our programs and retail areas. Expenses have been trimmed mostly due to efficiencies and the impact of a greater online presence, a trend that was accelerated during the pandemic. As mentioned earlier, we are experiencing inflationary increases in areas such as utilities, janitorial, security, materials, and contractors. We would like to thank you for your continued support, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, council. I will now open it up to questions. Councillor Hughes, go ahead.
Thanks for coming. I just have a couple of questions. So when I look at your expense lines, you have one for revenues that says miscellaneous. That's expected to increase, which is good news, but just what is considered miscellaneous in your revenues?
Oh, it includes things like memberships and just small amounts of money we get in that we can't put into any other category.
So why are you expecting it to increase? Is just because you'll be open more, or what is
Yes,
the?
Yeah, it's because we'll be open more and we expect our membership to rebound.
Perfect. You don't have any attendance numbers. I know that it's kind of been all over the board the past few years with open, close, open, close. What are you projecting? How did it, 2022, you were open for part of it. How are the numbers in 2022 compared to like baseline, I guess, before all of the chaos happened? And what are you projecting for this year?
As at the end of August, we were at 55% of our general visitation.
And how are you expecting it to, because I know your numbers of programs are increasing. Do you have an idea of, you think you're going to hit the 2019 levels again this year coming up?
We will
or?
not. We definitely won't hit the 29 levels, but that 55% is going to increase. January, February, March were very, very slow months. And so if we continue, we will certainly, we would hope to be between 60 and 70% of general attendance.
So just out of curiosity, why do you think that? Just like compared to what was in, let's say, 2019, why? Because for the most part, the world's kind of come back to normal operations. So why are you expecting it to still be lower?
So there were quite a lot of studies that were done during the pandemic, specifically in the cultural sector, and it did predict that people would be slow to return to museums and galleries and live performing arts. We've certainly seen that. Our numbers are a lot better than some other museums and art galleries, so we're watching it very carefully. The contradiction is that our own revenues are rebounding because people are actually signing up for programs. They're actually signing up for programs and actually coming into sort of retail spaces. So there's a little bit of a contradiction in that.
Perfect. So also your exhibition supplies and expenses are going up by about $8,000. Is it just because you're going to be open more, or what is there's no wrong answer here. I'm just wondering.
We're open more, and we also pay CARFAC fees to artists, and those increase a little bit every year as well.
Okay. And the last question I have is with the wages. So I see that the wages are going down for this year. The budget for 2022 is 1.6 million, and we're at 1.64, and we're at 1.59. So we're down by about 40,000. So have you been giving your staff COLA, like cost of living raises, or not? Or how are you keeping the wages down?
We reduced our sort of staff count during COVID. We've also reduced the use of contracted services, so that brings that down a little bit. And we are hoping to pass on a minimal COLA to our staff for 2023.
Okay, but the staff are still receiving cost of living increases. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Did they at any point stop receiving them, like during the shutdown?
Yes. During COVID, we trimmed our expenses, and cost of living was one of the expenses we had to trim.
Okay. And now it's back up, and that's fine. I'm just trying to get a history so we have an idea. I think that's my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Mr. Fletcher, the 1,754,000 that's in the budget. The request as is in the budget. Yeah,
That's
okay.
correct. You're
Just make it.
yep.
Yeah. All right, Councillor Bermaski.
Thank you. Through the mayor, I just have a few questions, sort of follow up to Councillor Hughes' questions. In the wage benefits and contracted services, which portion of the 1,599,000 is contracted services for the best part?
We would have to provide that information to you.
Okay.
The majority of it is our permanent staff. We also have some staff who are on term contracts at the moment. So that if you want an exact breakdown, we would have to get that to you.
Okay. And what's the number of staff currently, please?
We are at approximately 21 FTEs.
Okay, that's all the questions I had. I just wanted to mention it's unfortunate you're almost 20,000 greater in utilities and such. So
Yeah.
thank you again.
Thank you.
Right, and that's all the questions we had for you two ladies.
Well,
You look
thank-
surprised.
well, thank you, and good luck with the rest of the budget.
Thank you so much. Awesome. Before I go back to the library, I did see Cheryl Demont walk in. Hi, Cheryl. Are you ready to go now, or do you want to? Just public input generally goes first when they were scheduled, so I'd let you go ahead now if you want. Pardon? Oh, yeah. Oh, Marilyn, if you want, you can go and join. You can stay in, but we are normally encourage people to go turn off your camera and watch the rest of this meeting on the YouTube channel. Okay. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. My name is Cheryl Dumont, and I'm today presenting for St. Albert Further Education and the Newcomer Center. So I'm happy to be here. And I'm particularly here to talk about our Newcomer Center portion and the FCSS grant that we have applied to. And there's been lots of questions to us this year from FCSS, and I thought maybe by presenting, I could straighten out some of the information. So our most challenging work at St. Albert Further Education this year has involved a lot of hard work in the English language learning area and the Newcomer Welcome Information and Referral Center area. And you can imagine this has been caused because of the February 24 start of the Ukraine war. And shortly after that, the government of Canada announcing that they would be accepting Ukrainian evacuees in Canada here. And I just want to give you those numbers. And I have them here on one of these pages. We have had in Canada, 662,000 people have applied for evacuee status, the Canada, Ukraine evacuee status, which is known as SUIT, since February 24th. Of those applications, 360,922 have been processed. 99% of the applications viewed to date have been approved. Of these QIT holders, a total of 112,066 have arrived in Canada, and these are numbers as of November the 1st. Alberta health numbers tell us that over 14,000 Ukrainians have arrived in Alberta. It's probably pretty close to 15,000 now. 43% of those are settling in the Calgary area, 38% in the Edmonton area, which is interesting because Edmonton has the largest Ukrainian population in Canada. But it is the other percentage that is around the Edmonton area. And certainly when I'm on calls with the provincial government, St. Albert and area is often mentioned as one of the areas that's doing really good work in this particular area. So although the Newcomer Center has been around for a year and a half now and has done some astonishing work, this year alone to the end of October, we have had 600 appointments. Muna Abdul-Hussein has been very busy. She is our newcomer coordinator, as you know. We have helped over 200 families. We do know that with Ukrainian families, for example, that we are referring many of them to our partners, because at least 50% of our 200 families that we've been working with are also using, and we refer them to the food bank and the community village. So there is a real problem because the federal government has funded $1,500 for a child and $3,000 for an adult, and that might get somebody into a house, but it certainly isn't going to help pay for food and utilities and some of the other things that are around. So what's unique about this is we really had to step up, make training available all summer long, not just to here, but other provincial partners, because there were only 2 of us in the whole province that were helping to train over the summer in English language. So that has been keeping us really busy. That has been keeping Muna really busy and helping them with that information referral type services. There is another type service that the library provides. And I want to be clear that we think there is room for both of us, and we both do fairly different things, because we do not get involved with the kind of things that the library does, or sorry, that ISA, who the library contract does when it comes to ensuring that people have help what they need for any benefits, any kind of federal benefits, any kind of circumstances where they want to bring over parents, et cetera, et cetera. We refer those people to either ISA if they're there 2 days a week, or we put them through to Michael Cooper's office, because he also does that kind of work. So I just wanted to let you know that we are unique from ISA in that we have community connections, and those community connections allows us to connect people with neighborhoods, sports, with local doctors, with medical centers, with all of the kinds of things that someone from ISA, especially with 5 seconds, especially with an Edmonton background. So I hope you ask lots of questions so that I can give you more
We
answers.
could talk more.
I'll stop there.
And we actually also already have Councillor Romansky wanting to ask a question. So go ahead, Shelley.
To the mayor, to Cheryl, thank you for showing up today to council, and I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad of the work that you're doing in the new location there. Of the 200 families, how many of them settled in St. Albert?
The majority are settling in St. Albert. Certainly we hear when they're not, because they'll stop their English language lessons, and we'll hear that they've moved into Edmonton because they've got a job there. What might be important to you to know too, that out of need, we have helped over 90 individuals now, Ukrainians, linked to jobs. We have lots of relationships with the employers in town. We have jointly run with the city a couple of job fairs now, and the reason it is so important to get these Ukrainian jobs is that they do not have the income that they need, where a traditional refugee would have a whole year of support to allow them to learn English, find housing, find jobs, etc., be comfortable. These people don't have that luxury. Within 3 weeks, they need to have a job. And then we have to be flexible, and we have to offer those classes, not just during the day, which is our traditional way of running these classes, but we run them in the evenings. We run them on the weekends. We run them online as well as in person. So we've had to be really flexible. So does that sort of help, or am I drifted from?
No, that's fine. And just one following question, how are they directed to you?
Well, we're in the mall. And I did get a SIP grant, a community initiative program grant, to open in the mall, because our newcomers were telling us we were the best secret in town, and that not enough people knew about us, and that we needed to have an opportunity to be where people could see who we are, what we do, and how we can help. So a partnership with St. Albert Center, where they were looking for a nonprofit to come into the mall, allowed us to rent there at a very good rate, and be open so that people do know who we are, what we do. So people refer people. We have like 100 volunteers from the newcomer community that refer people. People refer to us through our English language classes, through the city, through the library occasionally too. Muna has worked in the library 1 day a week for, I would say, about 10 months this year, because we have a wonderful partnership with our library. We run our family resource program there, and the library helps us with our family resource. They're there every Tuesday morning with children that are preschoolers, and help us with that particular program too. So we have a good partnership with them.
Okay, so it would be St. Albert citizens referring people to you, and outside of St. Albert as well?
Absolutely, through our many volunteers and our staff members, and the many connections that we have with our nonprofits, with our city departments, etc. People know that we're there, and they know to refer them to us, to the library, and we're there 6 days a week, helping people.
Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you for being at our opening. It was exciting to have you there. We appreciate it, Councillor.
So Cheryl, just to make sure I'm understanding, well, you know the process. The application goes through our Community Service Advisory Committee and they adjudicate and make
do.
recommendations. We have not seen that. I don't even, I think they meet next week, to tell you the truth. So we haven't seen anything about what your ask is or what they would recommend. But just so I'm clear, the newcomers is run through St. Albert Further Ed. And so
Yes,
the
it is.
request comes through St. Albert Further Ed.
Yes, it's one of our programs under our umbrella, just as
Right.
our Star Literacy is, just like our general interest programs. Yes.
Okay, and St. Albert Further Ed has received funding in the past through outside agencies, correct?
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
The
So you-
outside agency helped us with our rent. The FCSS grant helps us with Munis salary. We
Okay.
have not asked for any help for anything else that we do
So-
there. We fundraise for that.
So because of all the turmoil with Ukrainians coming into St. Albert, is there a big increase in your ask?
No, there
No.
isn't. We've asked for, as we are allowed to with FCS, 80% of Munis salary,
Okay,
and that's it.
thank you.
I think there is some administration salary that we were suggested we could also, 5 or 10% of some admin salary.
Okay.
Yes,
Right, so it's
but
not
nothing for the rent at
not a
all.
big new,
No, we're
program
covering
or
that
anything.
under our CIP and then future grants that we're writing. And we are writing 2 grants right now that hopefully will come into play. And if it does come into play, we will return any dollars that we are lucky enough to receive from FCS.
and as I've said to you in the past, if
That's
you
a
ever need a
provincial.
letter of support from myself, then I would be happy to
Thank
do
you.
that, to help you with your grants. Oh, Councillor Hughes, you had a question, now you're gone.
You stole it.
Oh, okay. Any more questions for Cheryl?
I appreciate you all.
Yeah,
Thank you for the
Thank
time.
you, yeah. All right, I know I feel like I'm flipping all over the place, but now we're jumping back down to outside agencies to the St. Albert Library. So Colleen and Deborah are going to do the presentation. But as you can see, Peter Bailey is here. He will assist with questions. And normally in council, we do a 5-minute limit. I'm not sure what you prepared, but given what's going on with your budget and the questions in the community interest, take your time. And I'm sure there'll be lots of questions from council too. So
Thank
go
you.
ahead. Yep.
Thank you for that. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present the library's 2023 budget request. I am Library Board Chair Colleen McClure, and this is my co-chair, Deborah McTaggart-Baird. To begin, we would like to acknowledge that the library is a service founded and funded by the city, governed by a board appointed by council. All board members take very seriously their fiduciary responsibility and commitment to the financial oversight of the library. We value our ongoing collaborative relationship with the city, and we know that the budget decisions this council faces in the current economic climate are extremely difficult. We want to be clear as we begin this presentation. The library is not asking for more funding. Over the last 3 years, we have demonstrated our understanding of city fiscal realities. We've made tough decisions to make no growth funding work. Costs have continued to rise the past 3 years, and we've made cuts every single year in order to meet the need for a 0 increase. At the top of the slide, you see our original budget request for $4,562,000. When the library worked with city administration earlier this year, we were told to include a cost of living increase to parallel the city's COLA increase. Accordingly, the library board approved an increase to its budget in June. The second number on this slide is the changed library budget request figure with the $500,000 reduction proposed by city administration, $4,062,000. We hear you loud and clear. We would like to propose a better way forward, a way that recognizes the city's financial realities and one that preserves the frontline library services that St. Albertans love and need. We propose a 0 growth funding request for the library in 2023. This represents a cut of $213,000 from the board's approved budget in June. A zero growth budget is not easy for the library. To get there, we will require the immediate elimination of 2 full-time jobs at the library, with 2 experienced and expert library employees being let go. The elimination of 2 full-time positions is the first step in a long-range plan to streamline connections and materials management systems at the library. The plan comes from the main recommendation of the library operational review recently completed by consultant Dr. Margaret Law. The board commissioned the operational review at council's request, and we thank council for giving the library board this opportunity. We acknowledge that your offer to fund this review was done in the search for clarity following library-related recommendations in the Ernst & Young report. We hope that Dr. Law's report clearly highlights that the library cannot manage a 35% funding cut over the next 3 years without significantly impacting library services. The law report did identify areas where we can increase efficiency and find cost savings. Outsourcing collections and materials management will result in more staff reductions and eliminate the library materials center lease cost. Longer-term changes through attrition and restructuring will result in increased efficiencies as well as future cost savings. The library board is reviewing all of the recommendations and looking at implementation strategies now. Some of the details in the recommendations are sensitive because they reference specific positions, specific people. But the library has publicly shared a summary of the report on our website. Dr. Law's report is clear that overall, St. Albert's Library is running efficiently. She states, St. Albert Public Library is doing a good job of offering the services that are expected and valued by this community. The operational review recommends against closing Jensen Lakes Library. Closing Jensen Lakes Library would be contrary to the best practices for public libraries, which emphasize the need for the library to be accessible to all parts of the community. Closing it would be contrary to best practices for public libraries. Dr. Law goes on to say, closing this location disadvantages one segment of the St. Albert community, primarily those who are newly arrived in the city and those with younger families. This seems contrary to the city's Great Places goal that states, design and build distinctive gathering places that encourage outdoor activity, social interaction, and the enjoyment of civic life. Instead, the operational review recommends further investment in Jensen Lakes Library. This library should increase its level of programming independent of the programming at the downtown location. Programming at Jensen Lakes Library should reflect the interests of the community who use the location. Programs will be smaller due to space restrictions, but will increase the return on the investment in this location. Jensen Lakes Library is growing as North St. Albert grows. Year-to-date visits to Jensen Lake Library increased by 113% over last year. This spring, Jensen Lake Library saw a 36% increase in loans and 17% of all summer reading game registrations were there. Jensen Lake's children and youth read for 39,120 minutes this summer. Jensen Lake Library operations make up 378,000 or 8.5% of the library budget. We know that Jensen Lakes Library is an important part of the library mandate to be here for you and here for all. Back to the better way. We've made zero growth budgets work with difficulty over the last 3 years. We will make a zero budget work again in 2023. To recap, the past 3 budget years in 2020 Library funding by the city was reduced by 7%. Since then, funding has remained at a reduced level with 0 increases in 2021 and 2022. The 2023 bar indicates the additional cut to library funding proposed by administration. As costs have increased over the past 3 years, the library has had to cut staff and collections and reduce service levels to make the reduced funding work. In 2020, we absorbed the 7% cut through layoffs and salary freezes. We cut hours and collection budgets and used library reserves. In 2021, we cut 1 FTE, reduced open hours, made more collection cuts, and again used library reserves. In 2022, we eliminated another 2.5 FTE positions, continued with reduced hours and collection cuts, and used library reserves. In 2023, we will eliminate another 2 full-time positions, further cut collections, continue with reduced hours, and use more library reserves. In total, we have reduced our full-time equivalent staff from 42.6 in 2019 to 35.2 in 2021. As well as eliminating those permanent positions, more reductions have been achieved through cuts in staffing hours. In 2022, we operate 2 locations on fewer staff and less funds than we previously had to operate 1 location. And I'm going to turn this over to Deborah.
This chart shows how the city's funding works within the overall library budget since 2020. While the city is the library's primary funder, the library works hard to procure funds from other sources. This includes the province of Alberta through a per capita annual grant and a contract to provide career and job search assistance. New funding secured in 2022 included long-term funding for the summer reading games through the McCoy Family Foundation and a $200,000 capital grant from the federal government for renovations to the downtown library. St. Albert Public Library is run efficiently and cost effectively. The library is not overfunded. These peer comparisons are one demonstration of that fact, and Dr. Law's operational review is another. In 2021, in comparison to our mid-sized Alberta peers, St. Albert was 4th out of 7, after Strathcona County, Sherwood Park at number 1, Lethbridge at number 2, and Grand Prairie at number 3. St. Albert sits right in the middle of our peers in terms of the municipal funding per capita. What does St. Albert Public Library do with the city funding? A lot. The library was a leader among peers in returning to in-person programs in the fall of 2021. People needed to reconnect face-to-face. The library ran 595 programs in 2021 with 21,921 attendees. The community outreach van service was so very important during the worst of the pandemic. And this spring, Outreach Services won the Punch Jackson Award of Excellence for their work and outstanding work in 2021. The award citation applauded their multidimensional work and its impact on our community during and beyond the pandemic. In 2022, people are flocking back to the library and numbers are returning to near normal levels. Looking at year-to-date numbers last year and in 2022, total circulation of library materials has shot up 24%. Loans of print materials are even higher. They have increased by 32%. Memberships have grown 15% over last year. And most telling, in-person visits have increased by 100%, which includes the community's eager embrace of the return to in-person programming. People are thrilled to be back in library spaces, connecting with ideas, with each other, with technology, and with literacy opportunities. Programs are busy. This summer saw hundreds of kids registering for reading in a return to the library's iconic summer reading program. Across both locations, kids played the game 9,383 times this summer and read for over 58,000 minutes. The summer reading game also provides volunteer opportunities for teens. We had 30 volunteers this summer who donated 1,200 hours to help children unlock their reading magic. And responding to parental concerns over children's pandemic reading loss, we ran a summer version of our Reading Buddies reading encouragement program. Pictured here is just a tiny example of the busy programs run at SAPL this year. A sold-out Starfest event featuring Giller Prize winning author Omar El-Akid, a tech pop-up that engaged patrons of all ages and technology skills levels, and one of our many children's early literacy story times. The library truly is a community hub for all, and in time of economic pressures, people need the library more than ever. All this activity does come at a cost. As noted earlier, we have reduced staff levels steadily over the past 3 budget cycles. As part of Dr. Law's review, she interviewed almost every staff member. One of the messages she relayed is that staff are working at maximum capacity. As we present the 2023 library budget request to you, our concern is twofold. First, further cuts this year beyond the 0% budget we request will impact citizens in some of the ways outlined on the screen. We know times are hard for St. Albertans. The Gazette reported a couple of weeks ago that use of St. Albert Food Bank is up 43%, that people who used to be donors are now returning to access the services. Some economists are forecasting that Canada will officially be in a recession by early 2023. These are the times when people need the library more than ever. Secondly, we are concerned that despite the clarity provided to Council in the operational review, administration will continue to pursue further deep cuts in upcoming years. A $1.5 million cut over 3 years would devastate library services, affecting all the items on the screen and more. City administration has noted that they need some time to determine further internal cuts to city departments. We hope that you will grant the library that same opportunity. We've been doing our best to keep 3 years of rising costs and lower funding from impacting St. Albertans. A 0% budget this year means more job losses at the library and more service cuts. Implementing the collections and materials management changes will result in more savings and more job losses. But the deeper cut of an additional $287,000, as suggested by city administration, will unavoidably result in even more service level decreases. Several councillors have widely asked the question, do we want to make cuts on the backs of our most vulnerable citizens? And so we ask you to consider a better way. We ask that you reconsider the budget number inserted by administration and that you move to keep library funding at the same level as in 2022. The library has worked with the city these past 3 years, accepting cuts in static budgets. We are operating at full capacity, doing more with less. Community use and demand continue to increase, and we have less staff. We are moving forward with more cost savings in 2023 and beyond through the recommendations of the operational review. According to that review, the library is doing what the community needs it to be doing. There is no room for additional major cuts to the library. A zero growth budget in 2023 gives the library time to plan for and implement operational efficiencies identified by Dr. Law's review in a thoughtful, forward-looking way that also considers the needs of a community facing a likely recession. We know that all of you support the work of the public library and that you all have the best interests of St. Albertans at heart. The library board recognizes your challenges in keeping the tax increase as low as possible. As citizens and taxpayers ourselves, we thank you for your hard work and for your time today. And we certainly welcome any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, both of you. I'll start with, an understanding of all three of you, I think, need to hear this, what angst this causes. You know, there's staff involved, as you have said, and it's a scary time. And, you know, there's been an enormous amount of emails. I've lost count. Probably more than when, Peter, you remember this back in about 2015, 16, yeah, when we were trying to build the branch and we were getting inundated. This way more. It's crazy. And then the letters that we're getting even in person up in my office. So I just want to say, I recognize the angst this causes. It's just the process. And I hope you, and you did say it, Deborah. We are obligated, honestly, to look at what Ernst & Young, we spent a lot of money on that operational review, and we are absolutely 100% obligated to consider and have these conversations. It's just process wise, it takes time. And so I just want to apologize, I guess, for that angst that we're causing to the staff and to the public. I have, I guess, one big question. 4,300,000, your revised budget of 0%, which, by the way, I hate 0% because they just kick the can down the road for further increases. And that's pretty much why we're sitting in the situation of a high adjustment this year, is because we've had lower adjustments in the past and it just catches up with you. But my question for you is, with that reduced number, is Jensen Lakes able to stay open?
Yes, is the short answer.
Okay.
As with Dr. Law's review, you know, it doesn't make sense to close Jensen Lakes now that it's up and operating and it's popular and it's fulfilling the role we thought it could do. So yeah, the board, we're looking at other options.
Yeah, and I appreciate that takes time. And that was heard, or at least clearly by myself during your presentation. So.
And Dr. Law provided us with other options, which we know council has the report. So
Yeah.
we are certainly looking at those.
For sure.
So yes, we can continue with Jensen Lakes and
All right.
pursue other avenues.
All right, so that's it. That's it. Instead of a reduction of 500,000, I'm calculating about 286,900. Whatever the exact reduction number it is. So I'll let you know when I've already talked to some of my council colleagues that I'm probably going to put that motion forward to at least give you the 0%. So I haven't done it yet. I wanted to wait to today and get the questions out of the way, but I appreciate you somehow trying to meet us in the middle. And anyway, we do have other questions. So first up is Councilor Romansky. Shelley, go ahead.
Thank you to the mayor and to the library administrative leads there. The proposed budget that you presented last, of the 4,348,900, 3,658,100 of that is for wages and benefits. And so you're only leaving 690,000 for actual library function. Is that common in libraries?
Yeah, libraries are service organizations, they're people organizations, so yeah, it's a big misnomer that it's all about the books. So about 70% of our funding goes to people.
Okay, and the province, I noticed they've left their number constant. Have you been advocating the province for?
Yeah, we've been advocating on our own. The board has sent a letter to each new minister of municipal affairs that's put before us. And we've been advocating as we have a group of mid-sized libraries. We've done it that way. One of the key problems is the province keeps their rate the same, but they're also using 2016 population stats. So places like Airdrie that have grown so rapidly, they're really behind the 8 ball, but it hurts us as well.
Airdrie is building a new library, aren't they? Yeah.
They are, yeah.
A nice one. Yeah.
Okay, and what was your, I don't know if you have access to this information immediately, but I was curious of your budget in 2018 because you gave us the budget going forward when the Jensen Lakes was added. How much did it jump up from 2018?
That was one of the difficulties with the Ernst & Young work.
Okay,
They used 2019 as their year to compare us with other libraries. That was our peak budget year, because we did receive the Jensen Lakes funding that year. So from 2018 to 2019, our funding from the city went up 9.9%.
Okay, and your 100%, 113% usage increase since last year, would it have been quite a bit lower normally because of COVID last year?
Yeah.
Okay,
last
so it's
year
not
was-
113
Yeah.
of normal then?
Yeah.
Okay, and the contract services of 522,000, can you just describe a little bit of, or condensed version of what those are?
That budget line is, it's kind of a catch-all for things. You know, our people is our biggest expense and materials is the next biggest one. So books, DVDs, digital resources, about 500,000. It's kind of like everything else is in there. A big cost is for software. Maintenance contracts for our automated systems. You know, the sorter that's just inside the front door has a healthy maintenance contract for it. All our equipment has maintenance contracts for them. You know, the self-checkouts, each of them has a maintenance contract. That's coming out of that budget line. We don't have any actual contracted employees. We do offer honorariums to speakers and lecturers, that kind of thing. So that comes into there. Our audit, about $11,000 comes out of there. Yeah, it's pretty much all the other things that we purchase.
Okay, and back to the 2018 numbers, you don't have those?
I don't have them, but I do remember that 9.9% increase
Okay.
going from 2018 to 2019. Yeah.
Okay, thank
I
you.
can get that for you, of course.
Okay, and in the Ernst and Young report, it stated that the leadership team is unusually large. Is that, would you say that your leadership team is large compared to other libraries?
That was in Margaret Law's report, yeah. We have 7 on our team. I found it easier to include people in those meetings rather than having to explain things otherwise. The leadership team meets every 2 weeks. So there is an hour-and-a-half meeting every 2 weeks. Dr. Law thought that was inefficient. So we are considering taking the 2 service coordinators, children's coordinator and adult coordinator, taking them off the leadership team so they don't have to attend those meetings every 2 weeks. So that's, you know, it's a small efficiency. But we can do that, yeah.
Okay, and sorry, I'm taking a lot of time here.
No, it's all.
One other or 2 other questions, I guess. So the Jensen Lakes location, I did receive a lot of letters from individuals that lived in, you know, Legal, Morinville, north of the city. So I mean, it's convenient for them to drive to that library, but it's really not serving all parts of the community as we describe in St. Albert. A lot of people also mentioned to me that they live in, you know, I guess, South End, you know, Southeast. They've never even been to the library. So I can understand that it's like serving all parts, but is it realistically serving all parts or just the Jensen Lakes and North region predominantly?
Its primary focus is on the north, yes. But it is available to everybody. I think one of the interesting stats is our holds pickup. You know, people pick up their books that they put on hold. It's a much larger percentage of people that pick up their books at Jensen Lakes than it should be. You know, I'm looking for my circulation manager. 20% or something.
Like during COVID,
Mhm.
I picked up all my holds at Jensen Lakes. Because it was just so much easier. You just drive to the front door. I don't live right in that community.
Right.
So it is available for all citizens in St. Albert.
So it is a convenience. Did the people that use that library, were they members at the main library prior for the best part?
We don't know that. I suspect yes. I think there are definitely people have joined just because Jensen Lakes is there. Yeah. One of the interesting things was in the newly annexed areas,
Mhm.
right away, we had people coming to Jensen Lake saying, this is the one best thing about joining the city, is this library. So they didn't even have addresses yet, St. Albert addresses. So it is drawing from the new areas. Yeah.
I also had a number of people mention to me that they would be happy paying a library fee. Have you heard that from people as well?
There are very few libraries left that still have a membership fee. It's technically against the Libraries Act. You know, libraries got around it for years by calling them card fees instead of membership. It was fancy dancing.
Right.
2017, we removed our fee, following the lead of most other libraries in our region, you know, especially Edmonton. We saw a big increase in the number of people coming to the library. And, you know, for most of us, $20 a year or whatever is not a barrier. It is a significant barrier we found, and it was shown with the statistics of people joining the library after we dropped that fee. So it's not it also takes money, staff time to collect the membership fee. So it's almost more of an expense than you're getting back in revenue. Our final year of membership fees, 2016, we had about $120,000 raised in terms of fees. Membership fee. So collecting it is it's kind of a wash. So I think I have the board support in you know, not going back to that situation.
Okay, and my last question, and then I'll give the others time here. Do any other libraries pay rent? Like you have a rental contract for the Jensen Lakes? Are they paying an outside rent to you know, a developer, to a landowner, to whatever, rather than a city?
It's not uncommon. Edmonton Public Library for a time had many you know, strip mall locations like Jensen Lakes. They've moved away from that. You know, they're mainly looking at co-locating with city recreation facilities, that kind of thing. It's not uncommon, I guess you'd say.
Okay, thank you for your answers. I know, you know, the public loves the library, but we have to look at what we have to look at. So thank you.
All right, Councillor Hughes, you're up next.
Thanks. Long day already. Hey, Peter. Just so you know, I absolutely love the library, like period. It was the first thing I was excited about when I came back to St. Albert. It was the next day I got the library card. So like, this is a Joel St. Albert bar none. So I'm just going to ask a couple questions. I want to just, Mayor Herons, I put forward the motion for the recommendation of the 0%. So she beat me to the punch for the send button. That's excellent, though, because we have a second vote. So that's fine. So I just want to make sure we understand the effects in case this recommendation does not pass. So the effects that you have, the 213,000 reduction, you're doing 2 staff decreases. So is there going to be what are the effects to the services levels as a result of these staff reductions so far?
So these 2 staff members were given notice on Thursday afternoon, and the termination starts January 1, 2023. One of these positions is in the Library Materials Center, which is in the professional building. These are the people who do the acquiring, cataloging, processing of materials. So the less glamorous stuff, but absolutely essential. Those people are really good at their jobs. You know, having an in-house cataloging and processing department is fabulous. You know, it's one of the reasons we're able to get books and other materials to the shelf really quickly. I mean, you're waiting for materials at Edmonton Public Library for a long time. compared to us. We're second to none. So Dr. Law's recommendation was it's inefficient to have your own cataloging and processing department, so you need to outsource it. So we are headed towards that. And this was the first step. This one position. What does that mean? Well, it's probably going to be a little bit of a delay in terms of getting your holds, getting the books to the shelf. The other position is our digital services librarian, and she spends about half her time doing collection development, collection management for all our digital resources, including ebooks, streaming products, databases, that kind of thing. Again, there may be a delay if you're looking for a particular ebook or e-audio book, that kind of thing, because we're trying to reposition her duties with other overworked people in the library. The other half of her time, she's doing stuff like technology training. We started in September with a real focus on technology training. How do I use this device? How do I use Google Drive? All that kind of thing. So she's organizing those things, those sessions, and she's also delivering it mainly. So there's going to be an immediate impact once she leaves in January in terms of a drop in our technology training offerings. So you mentioned that's the initial 213,000. So going beyond that to the full 500,000 cut, we're very concerned. As I said to Councillor Birmansky, we're a people organization. So our biggest investment is in people. So it works the other way around. If we need to save money, it's got to be people. So what positions do you terminate to get to the extra 300,000? Well, first of all, it's several positions. What do we look at? We know children's programs are gold medal programs. They're always oversubscribed. So we're looking to things that are maybe less popular, still popular. Teen programming, for example. We have a teen services coordinator. I'm not saying we're laying off our teen services librarian. But these are the choices we're looking at. Where do we go next? Our senior services, we do seniors programming, but it sees fewer people than like an early childhood story time. Any person we choose, any position we choose has an impact throughout the organization. We have 66 employees, the bulk of them part-time. But each one of them is important to our organization. Each one of them has an impact throughout the organization. Even our shelvers putting books on the shelves, everyone is important, and every layoff that we're forced to do will have an impact, and it'll have an impact on services to St. Albertans. I guess to finish up, the board and I will be discussing where, if council chooses to go to that extra 500 full cut, we'll be discussing
Okay.
what will impact St. Albertans the least.
So first of all, I appreciate the fact that you're trying to figure out how to manage this without having drastic impact to services as your first goal, because you could take it two ways, and you're obviously trying to work with the city to figure out how to accomplish a compromise here. So I really appreciate that. The two layoffs that you're doing, were those recommendations from the report, or are they actually in addition to the recommendations from the report?
They come from Margaret Law's report, yeah.
Okay.
So
they-
her big report was her recommendation was around collections and materials management. Yeah.
Okay, so when I look at what has happened over the past 4 years or so, there's been a reduction like 5 or more employee FTEs. And I'm when I look at this, I think it's kind of manageable because it was done slowly. Like you didn't just cut 5 people at one time and then say, how do we handle it? It was able to be done in a bit more of a gradual and deliberate way as
And
opposed to trying to
It
do
was done
knee-jerk.
through attrition as well.
Right.
So
So the least painful.
Yeah.
With the exception of this year.
this year was not attrition.
Yeah, this year's not attrition, but that way at least it was less painful and a bit more thoughtfully put out as opposed to just trying to handle something because it was an emergency situation. Okay, just let me get to, so the increase to the salaries, I said there's been a modest increase from last year, but it's not really that much more than 2020. So the AHFs mentioned that they did not have any salary increases for a couple of years. Did you guys also do salary freezes over the pandemic?
Yeah, in 20 and 21. So
Okay,
no COLA and no grid movement, merit increases.
right.
increments.
And so, like when I look at the history of the library before, it was basically, with the exception again of Jensen Lakes, it was going up around 200,000 a year just to cover COLA. That was just the COLA increases. And so when you say you're flatlining, basically you reduce the budget equivalent of almost 800,000 over the course of 4 years because you haven't done gradual increases
That's right.
of the
Yeah.
200,000. Okay, and then the other question I had was did you guys get any COVID recovery money to help you guys cover?
No, where the feds considered us part of the municipality, so we're
Okay,
ineligible.
okay, I think I'm almost done here. Because Councilor Maskey asked some of my questions on me. Okay, so the increase that you have right now is basically just from COLA to compensate for the fact that we're now reinstating it and the employees actually
That's
can
right.
get
That's right.
an increase for the first time in a while.
As you know, for decades now, the board has supported library staff being paid on the same grid as city staff. It's just an equity situation.
The other thing is just discussing about, I realize the branch is not up for grabs right now, but one of the concerns I had. I mean, I was the only person back last council to not support the branch, but we have it now. So let's deal with the situation that we have right now and accept and try to maximize it. Like, even if we were to tell you to close the branch, or you still are gonna have ongoing funding issues because of the leaks, correct?
Yeah.
Just to clarify, we cannot tell them.
No,
To
but if we
close the
cut the
branch.
funding
Yeah.
for it and they chose to really.
Your funding
say,
is
"Look,
yours to do with.
Yeah, we give you the total number, you guys manage it, but there would still be. You would, even if we said, well, this is the full amount, the cost for the branch, you would still incur costs.
Yeah, there's nothing in our lease agreement, which we did have negotiated by a lawyer. There's nothing in there about an early leaving clause, so I guess in common law, it's about subletting or the landlord finding someone to take over the space, but yeah. Our lease runs to 2030, so
Okay,
we could be on the hook for it.
right, so we should expect it until otherwise that we would still have, I think it's over $100,000 for the leasing and the utilities and all that fun stuff.
Yeah,
right?
the lease and operating costs, utilities is 137 a year.
Right.
Thousand.
So regardless, just so, I guess for the population that's watching, even if we say we're closing it, you still don't get the full money until they find someone else to take that space. The other question I had was, obviously there's additional books that are purchased for the library branch. So if it were to, this is all hypothetical because we're not discussing this right now, but one of the challenges I'm looking at is you have all these extra books from the branch. Would you actually be able to fit them in with the current main library to store it? Because I know that you do have capacity issues.
We've, because of the CCRF, the renovation, we've taken a really pretty ruthless approach to collection management at St. Albert Place. You've probably seen the empty shelves in adult nonfiction.
Mhm.
We really worked hard. We're going to move all the audiovisual materials upstairs to create, a reading gathering area on the main floor. So,
Okay.
So those empty shelves are spoken for DVDs and.
And let's, Councillor Hughes, let's stick to budget questions, not
Yeah.
their operations.
Sorry, I know, I'm just trying to make sure that if we, like, sometimes there might be a motion to do more. And I just want people to understand the ramifications. And if the intention is that we'll cut the branch money, what will be the consequences if it were to happen this year? That's all.
right.
So, because it's not just about the money, it's about what happens when you push the ball down the hill. I think that's it for questions from me now. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Killick, you're up next.
Thank you for the presentation and also, thank you for the. Yeah, that's what, I couldn't see you either, or see Peter, but I got the weird, I got the weird. Hopefully not. But I would say, just thank you for the presentation today. The information that you've made and shared with council, when we had our meeting previously. That I just want to ensure the public that every letter that has been sent either through email or fax copy or direct to the mayor or direct to councilors has been looked at and received by everyone on council. And there certainly shows a strong level of engagement in the population. So we're fully aware of that. And I want people to be assured that we have seen all of those letters and emails. The one question I have is that during our meeting, there was some previous meeting, there was some disconnect, I would say, between what the library believed the city was contributing in services in kind, in rent and other services. And I just want to make sure that we have now reconciled those differences and we're operating on the same understanding of what that financial benefit is that the city provides, so that we're, from a budget perspective, we're comparing apples to apples. Has that, are we all on the same page now?
Cindy DeBruin and I have been negotiating a service level agreement, I think. And I think the appendix of that is basically a listing of what services the city provides to us. I don't think there's a discrepancy on what those services represent in terms of a monetary value. I think we're in agreement on that. Yeah.
Okay.
That agreement is, I haven't received the final one, so, but I understand it's, you know, it's ready for signing from the city side at least.
Okay, great. I think that's important that we know that maybe we don't have the final document, but at least we've gone through the process and are getting close to the right number, because there was a disconnect, a pretty significant disconnect originally, I think. So that's good. I'd also just like to, that's the only question I have, but I would like to say that you've said the library is a bit of a people organization. I think it's more of a service organization to the city. To deliver those services, it requires people. And so I would recognize that. And also thank you for making the law report, which was, you know, confidential, making that open. You know, as a council, I think we want to be transparent. As the mayor said, it does create a lot of angst in the community and obviously a lot of feedback. But in sharing those kind of reports, but you know, our Ernst & Young report with you and the law report back with us, I think shows a level of trust that we're trying to work to a common solution here. So really appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Killick. Councillor Broadhead, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to the library board for coming and presenting today. Madam Mayor, I need to make a statement here. First off,
We'll allow it.
Because I'll just state right up front that I have two relatives working for the library. However, this does not put me in a position of pecuniary interest. I want to declare that to those that are online and who are here. And the MGA it's rock solid in terms of what the requirements are for a counselor to vote and
Yeah.
when they are
Thank
not
you.
allowed to
Thank you.
vote.
Yeah.
And so I need to weigh in whether I want to or not here. And so to that end, thank you for your presentation. And based on that, I'll continue. I also want to thank you for making the law report public. It was a significant piece of work that followed on the Ernst & Young report, and I think it was appropriate that the findings of that are able to be contrasted with Ernst & Young report. And I think there's meat there for the library board to consider. And so I guess that's my question, not so much to administration of the library, but to the board. Is your commitment then to take a look at those recommendations by Margaret Law and introduce them into sort of the future budget considerations of the library going forward?
Thank you for the question. Yes, and we have already considered them. So if you look at what has already been done with regards to reducing the collections management, ending the lease where that in that professional. So that was one of Dr. Law's first recommendations. So we're already acting on those as a board, and we'll continue to consider her recommendations. So yes, we are. It was a helpful report.
It was indeed. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you, Councillor Broadhead. Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, I'm ticking off all the
Yeah.
questions that I have here as it is going on. I can see you now, by the way. That's good. I was mentioning to Colleen earlier that you have to kind of come around the corner because there's this shield. I don't know what it's doing there anymore, but anyways, I just want to say, I think my fellow councillors have really adequately expressed some of the comments that I was hoping to make, but I just also want to say how much I appreciate the presentation. I appreciate the board, and I appreciate all the staff. But I think maybe it goes to some of the comments you made, Councillor Killick, in relation to potentially some, not confusion, but maybe some angst. And I know, and I've gone both ways on this stuff. We used to actually have a councillor on the board. You look. Can you give me, I can certainly go back and kind of relate some of what we saw as pros and the cons of having a counselor on the board. I'm just interested in whether or not you would want to take us, provide your input on that.
You were one of our wonderful members, and Councillor Broadhead, before my time on the board, I believe was also on the board. Councillor Hanson, Councillor Hughes. My opinion, Colleen McClure, is that it was nothing but additive. I think it gave us an understanding of what council was experiencing, some of the challenges you had. And I really delighted in having a council member on the board and was disappointed when we didn't have one anymore. And I should say most library boards have council members. In fact, in the Library Act, the limitation is you can't have more than two. Well, we don't have any. So we're missing you. We're really missing you. We'd like you to join us again.
Oh, that's
Anyone's welcome.
even me,
Yeah.
right?
Even you.
Maybe.
Like,
Let's not go too far.
Maybe, yeah, let's not do. I just also want to give a little anecdote. I was, as I was coming across into this meeting, a car pulled up, and we all know what the weather is like outside. And a van pulled up, and a little lady jumped out and came through the snowbank and was waiting for me. And I offered her my arm to go across, and she was just a tiny wee lady, and she had the most beautiful Scottish accent. And of course, that was a hit for me right off the bat with my last name. But walking across and I said, where are you going? And she said, I'm going to the library. And I said, on a day like today? And she said, I have no more books, so I have to go. And so we know how important the library is in our community. And so for just building on what Councillor Killick said, we heard every letter. We didn't necessarily respond to any letter because we have a process that we have to go through. And we have to hear all the sides of the argument, and we have to debate it in this chambers. And that's what I want everybody to listen to and understand. But I also want you guys all to know, I mean, Councillor Hughes called it a jewel. I call it a community hub, and I call it a great equalizer for our society. So thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
Sorry, I just have one more. This looks like a good report. This is a good afternoon, I would say, if I was on your seat right now, based on what we've heard today. But I just want to be clear. So the law report, which I'm really glad that you guys took really seriously when you did have it approved by council, so that we actually had some tools to work with as we move forward, and didn't just do blind cuts. But you're not done implementing them. It's just that you require time to implement some of the recommendations. Is that correct? So we'll be seeing more efficiencies as time progresses as a result of that report.
That's right. So I announced to staff that we will be closing the library materials center in the professional building and moving to more outsourcing. And, the lease itself at the professional building goes to July 2024. So, there's no savings in 23 from closing that facility. And then we're engaging in the actual outsourcing of materials. We still need people to do that work.
Yeah.
Even if we're outsourcing the bulk of our materials. So yeah, we
Sure.
really appreciate any time we can have to put that into motion.
Okay, just because I just want to be clear, like, it's not like you're taking it and done. We're taking it, we're still looking at it. And as far as the outsourcing goes, my recommendation is just to really look at that cost benefit thing, because sometimes you can you can lose weight by cutting off your left leg, and that doesn't exactly work. So I understand all the recommendations are there, but I also just say, just consider everything before you bring something forward.
Oh, yeah.
For future years. But yeah, thank you.
I have no more questions except for maybe a request of you all on your Defend the Library page. It does say City Council is considering cutting of the library budget by 1.5 million. I was wondering if you could maybe clear it up for the public that it's not 1.5 million. Administration had recommended a 500,000. It was Ernst & Young that said 1.5. Our administration is recommending 500. And now, just for clarity, because it sounds really 1/3 of the funding, because that's not what we're considering. So I'm wondering, Peter, if you could just clarify that maybe on your Defend the Library page.
Sure.
Yep. And lastly, I already had submitted the motion to fund you, but our lovely finance officer noticed that I'd made a quick error in my typing. I was going so fast. I've actually submitted a motion to fund you at 4 billion. So there you go. 4,400,000,000.
We were very successful. Our board is like awesome.
All right, I see no more questions. Thank you guys for coming. You're obviously welcome to sit around and listen to the rest of our conversation. All right. Council, do you need a break? It's been about an hour and a half. Okay, let's take a quick stretch and then we'll get back and we can go into questions. We also have planning and engineering, public operations and utilities, but if you have any specific questions of staff for HF and library, then we can do that now too. All right.
I know. I don't know why the country is that very long.
Cheryl. Chad and Cheryl, I did not have you registered. I'm apologetic right now. So as soon as we get back from our break, you're up first. I apologize. Okay, all right. Okay, thanks. Cheryl, I'm just forwarding you the email that Diane sent me about my error, and so it contains the right number.
Perfect, thank
Okay,
you.
yeah. So I do just you, is that good, or all of Ledge?
You can just send it to me and I'll
Okay.
get it to the person.
We ready, Sean? Do I need to reset? No, I'm still there. Okay. All right. And no sign of Natalie yet? Okay, all right. I will start the meeting off if we can unmute and get the screen back up. We're good? Okay, it just says, oh, there we go. All right, and council, I apologize, but I missed a speaker, a registered speaker. So Chad from St. Albert Housing Society has been sitting here from the very beginning, and I apologize. Normally I get an email at the beginning of the day to say who's registered, and I might have accidentally archived it or something. So sorry about that, Chad. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for giving me a few minutes.
Yeah, sure. And it was nice meeting you at the lunch. I'm gonna say right off the bar before I start. That day was the 25th of November, right? We had in our calendars a hold to go out and do a sweat with one of our urban Indigenous residents. And so probably many of council had declined the lunch because the sweat was already planned, and then the sweat got canceled. So I know Councillor Mackay was like texting me, what's going on? So apologies that not more of council was there. It just when they declined, they lost it. So I'm sure there would have been more there if that mix up hadn't happened.
Understood. The next time we have a formal occasion will likely be sometime in the winter.
Okay.
And we will give you more advance notice because I know scheduling your calendars that are already packed is likely part of the reason that.
It might have been. Yeah.
So I appreciate it.
It was a great lunch though.
Yes, the speaker, I think, knocked it out of the park
He
and
did.
really brought home what we do. And so, it would have been nice to have more people hear that, but I think we will probably have the same speaker.
Okay.
Yeah,
bring him back.
Yeah.
All right, I'll give you your 5 minutes. I'm taking it up. Sorry, go ahead.
So given what you talked about, your worship, at the outset of the start of the meeting, that it is very likely that there will not be cuts to charitable funding.
Mhm.
I will drastically reduce the amount of information that I was going to present. Just for those who haven't met me, my name is Chad Rosado. I'm a retired combat engineer of more than 27 years in the Canadian Army. My last responsibility in the military was to complete a project for homeless veterans while I was seconded to the province of Alberta. This was my formal introduction to the world of affordable housing. And after my recent retirement and completion of my MBA at the University of Alberta, I became the chair of the St. Albert Housing Society just this past September. So I've only been in the chair seat for 2 months. Just on a personal note, for all of you that are contributing your time in public life, I have great respect for those who submit themselves to the vagaries of elected office. My mother was an elected school board trustee for 3 terms while I was a teenager growing up in my hometown. And that was more than 3 decades ago. And the demands of public office holders have only increased since then. So just from myself, thank you for what you do. I know it's not always an easy place to be. I will forego many of the slides that I was going to share. And what I will present is what your grant funding does contribute to for us. So I'm just going to advance the slides. And so if you've seen a diagram that looks like this is the housing continuum. And the part of this continuum that our society operates in is sort of the middle portion of the continuum. We started out in 2012 or so with 12 units at Big Lake Point. And through reinvestment of the rent that came in, we increased that number to 27 units. And so those 27 units are part of what looks a lot like social housing. All of the units in that building are affordable rental housing. But recently, we just last year, we introduced, we bought a bungalow and converted it into 2 more affordable housing units. But those units have different security measures in place, and they serve as transitional housing for abused women, essentially. I lack the proper terminology to say it better than that, but that's what those 2 units do. And so our speaker at the lunch is one of the 2 residents in that transitional housing. What we're about to embark on is what the grant funding will greatly help us with. We are about to build a very interesting project with TLA Developments. They're a land developer. They're working very closely with Landrex, and they are building a 362 unit complex that will be just north of the Costco. And we will, as St. Albert Housing Society, own 10% of those units. And so the affordable component of the development will be indistinguishable from the larger market housing. So they will look exactly the same. And so that is what the funding contributes to us accomplishing. We have the objective by 2040 of getting to a total of 400 units of affordable housing, which is approximately 10% of the requirement in St. Albert. And the last point that I would like to make is it is well within our bylaws, and it has happened in the past, that we have had a city councillor sit on our board. And so much like the library spoke of, there is an open invitation for any of the city councillors that would like to come and sit on our board.
Perfect. Look at that, 0-0, right on.
I'm an army guy. I say.
I think this is probably the first time many on this council have heard about the TLA development. I heard about it at the lunch, obviously, and I'm meeting with, I can't remember the fellows.
The grant.
Yeah, Troy. Yeah. So that's awesome. It's great news. As I said at the beginning of today, there's no proposed cuts to outside agencies and FCSS, and that process goes through the process of being adjudicated by the Community Service Advisory Committee. So they will do that next week, but yeah, so I don't think you need to worry. And you know, I guess I don't want to blame anyone here, but you know, we did have a conversation with all possible thoughts that of cutting the taxes down. And unfortunately, when the Gazette reports on that and it's so public, it does send anxiety through the community that is completely unnecessary. So we probably need to have some better communication with the Gazette before they run those stories, because it has caused a lot of emails that are very unnecessary. So apologize for.
I definitely took note when it was on the front page. Yeah,
I'm sure you did. Yeah. And I wish we could fix that kind of stuff, but Councillor Mackay has a question, I guess.
Yeah, question and a comment, but first let me turn the favor back and say thank you for all your years of service and your dedication. I appreciate it. My ears perked up, well, as much as they possibly can, when you mentioned in your involvement with homes for veterans. And I mean, certainly I can speak for Mayor Heron, but I know for myself, that's been something that's been of particular interest. And because I mean, so much of our community is made up of veterans and or serving members. But as we are hearing more and more, many of our serving veterans are left with, you know, a lot of, I'm losing the appropriate words for it, but let's call them scars. And they need housing. And I know that there's a lot of initiatives that are out there, Homes for Heroes being one. And I just recently toured the APCO Homes for Heroes on 153rd. So I mean, that's something that's of particular interest to me. So I'd like to kind of put that on your radar as something that maybe is something that you and I can talk about later. But I'm very, very excited about the TLA and your ongoing work, but I wanted to make sure that, but I also wanted to take the time when you're standing in front of us, just to talk about the Homes for Heroes or an opportunity to look at something like that in our community.
I think that would be a great initiative. The problem becomes scale. And so there are other ways to work with Homes for Heroes. Just as an example, I know that what Homes for Heroes is doing, if you look at this spectrum, they sit somewhere between transitional and social housing for what they do. And so one of the ways that our board has already talked about working with organizations like Homes for Heroes is to provide the next stage of housing when they're ready to move outside, generally when they're ready to move outside downtown Edmonton a little bit more. They migrate outwards, and then we become a possibility for them to move on to the next stage of housing. So in addition to the possibility of having something very specific that meets transitional housing for veterans in St. Albert, one of the other ways that we could also help is to move them through the progression.
Yeah, and I'm only naming the ones that I'm familiar with, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm just suggesting though that with certainly that background, that model, how it fits into best suit our community. I'm open to that, but that's all.
Thank you.
That's all you got? Okay, Councillor Killick.
Chad, thanks for coming to address council today, and thanks actually more than anything probably for adjusting your slide deck so quickly on the fly to we appreciate that. And my question is quite simple, and it's the first I've heard of TLA. Maybe I received an email.
Oh, did you?
Maybe I did, or maybe I didn't, but because my inbox was overwhelmed with letters from the library. So if there's an opportunity that you could share something with council that would explain a little bit more about that, I'd love to hear more and learn more. And
Councillor Killick, it's because it's budget today. I've got a meeting with Troy. I will let all of you know.
Okay.
Because I don't know anything about the project either. So why don't we meet with TLA? And Chad, did I invite you to that meeting?
No,
If not-
I was aware of it through Troy.
Yeah, okay.
But if I could be included, I would appreciate
Sure.
it.
Yeah, I'll do it that way. Is that good? Yeah.
Perfectly.
I know, it's the first time I heard of it. I got an invite from Troy and I didn't even know what it was about. So this is pretty exciting and pretty new. So, yeah.
Yeah, super excited to just based on the 2 minutes on the slide. So it sounds like we've got lots of positive interest. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Okay, Council and Chad invited to, okay, writing it down. All right, that's all we have. Thank you so much for coming. And again, apologize for the confusion.
No worries.
Got here at 2 and now it's 4.
Thank you
Sorry.
for the 5 minutes. I really appreciate it.
Okay, council, let's get into our budget overview presentations. Mr. Fletcher, we're going to start with planning and engineering. Okay.
Yeah, yes, your worship, through you to council. Thank you very much. First of 3 functional presentations today, planning, engineering, followed by public operations and utilities. And this afternoon, we will kick off with planning and engineering services, and Dawn is sharing her screen. Perfect. And if we could go right to the next slide, please. The engineering services, planning and development departments work closely together to manage our city's growth and sustainability. This includes monitoring the quality and the safety of our buildings, land developments, and public infrastructure. A brief comment on each functional area. Engineering services stewards the city's infrastructure, which enables connectivity and growth while adhering to professional standards and regulations. They ensure a high level of service and high quality, sustainable infrastructure through collaboration. This department provides engineering services covering a wide variety of areas of specialization, including the city's transportation network, our infrastructure and asset management, servicing, urban development, and corporate project management. Our planning and development team ensures that St. Albert grows in a safe, responsible, and sustainable manner. The planning branch manages land use in the city, including long-range planning, reviewing subdivision applications, formulating land use plans and policies, and conducting public consultations on proposed land use changes. This branch also provides mapping and addressing functions and affordable housing initiatives. The development branch administers the permitting and compliance certificate process, as well as ensuring building and renovation design meets the high quality standards expected in the city of St. Albert. Next slide, please. This slide shows the overall impact to the 2023 proposed budget as compared to the 2022 revised. Net impact is an increase of $69,000, mainly a result of, on the revenue side, $184,000 increase in license and permits consistent with rate increases. And on the expenditure side, a $253,000 increase in materials, goods, supplies, and utilities due to anticipated increases in electricity charges. Next slide, please. Engineering services requires investment in employees in order to maintain current service levels as demands have increased over the past few years. Several of the positions have been temporary positions that have been continually renewed and now need to be transferred to permanent FTEs in order to gain the efficiencies with employee attraction and retention. This will require an increase of $1,500 for each position. Those positions include Capital Projects Resource Coordinator, who is directly responsible for the successful delivery of capital projects of a repetitive or annual nature up to $1 million in value. Transportation Data Coordinator, who is key in our asset management and planning programs for providing data management and reports that enable evidence-based and cost-effective RMR plans, which is repair, maintenance, recovery. Did they get that right? RMR. Repair, maintain, replace. Repair,
Recovery.
maintenance, and recovery is a military term.
Yeah, recovery is a pandemic
Repair,
term
maintain,
too.
replace. Their work also informs traffic control requirements, traffic impact assessments, and regional network demand reports. The Project Resource Administrator supports the Capital Projects Office through construction, communication, and administrative support. Adding a junior engineer technologist to the development engineering team will address increased demand and mitigate capacity constraints. This position will enable staff to continue to complete new lot grading and service connection inspections, along with development agreement inspections at a cost of $32,200 annually. At the volume of development has more than doubled in the past 3 years. The volume of inspections for landscape material has increased as well, particularly germane given our standards here in St. Albert. The request for a temporary landscape technician for $90,000 will build internal capacity to review the drawings and inspect all of the installations while maintaining our service levels. Next slide, please. On the capital side, an update to the Transportation Master Plan that aligns with the new Municipal Development Plan and the recently completed Regional Transportation Plan will set policy, principles, and guide the delivery of needed transportation networks for forecast growth. The cost of this work will be $800,000. The Active Transportation Plan project targets completion of engineering, design, and construction of new sidewalk and trail structures to eliminate gaps within the existing active transportation network and is budgeted at $500,000. The North St. Albert Trail Corridor work follows through on the implementation of identified roadway improvements and urbanization in the north section of St. Albert Trail, north of Everett Drive North. This large-scale project is estimated to cost $24,323,900. Fowler Way Design and Construction targets the completion of engineering, design, and construction of Fowler Way with a capital charter for $4.4 million. The Villeneuve Road rebuild will urbanize the roadway cross-section and accommodate active transportation and new accesses or intersection improvements. This rebuild will require an investment of $17,057,000. And finally, for the request for $227,000, Rural Road 260 road construction is for road infrastructure to the proposed community amenities site at the western corner of Ray Gibbon Drive and Villeneuve Road, which will also lead into the Lakeview Business District. Next slide, please. In summary, for the 2023, Planning and Engineering Services is proposing an overall net increase of $69,000 over the 2022 amended budget. Key influences are increases in licenses and permits consistent with rate increases offset by materials, goods, supplies, and utilities due to anticipated increase in electrical charges. This concludes my presentation for Planning and Engineering Services, pending your questions. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. We'll open it up for questions now, and I just got a message that Councillor Jolly has logged on. So Councillor Jolly, we just got our first presentation from Planning and Engineering. So we're open for questions. All right, let's move on to public operations. Thursday, questions? Councillor Hughes.
Okay, sorry, thank you. Okay, so just so we are clear, so the engineering services, it's a term position then that's just kind of ongoing for the 90,000, as is the junior engineer technology, because you're not putting it as an FTE, but it's also continuing. So is it a contracted position?
I'll turn that over to Donnie George to respond to.
Thank you, Bill. Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, those two positions are term positions. It's not an FTE.
Okay, but it is ongoing, basically, it's term, but.
Would likely, yeah.
So the engineering technologist for 32,000, there must be another funding source for part of that. 'Cause I don't know of any engineering technologist that works for $16 an hour. So how?
I would, through the chair, I'd pass that on to John Reed. He has done the math behind the scenes, so hopefully John can help with that.
Thank you, Donnie, and through the chair to Councillor Hughes. The intent is not to have a full-time staff for the full year. It's only intended to be a temporary position, either substituted with a engineering student, co-op student, or a technologist that can work for just the summer months as a short-term 4-month position.
Okay, that helps. So it's really just like a 4 to 6 month position, not a year-round type thing. Okay, perfect. So the other positions, let me just cross off stuff. Some of my questions have been answered now. The project engineer, when I look at that, the reason for making it a permanent is because of staff turnover. When I read through the pages, are we thinking that we'll never not need this position, or is it that, like, obviously the staff turnover is an issue, but is there ever a time that we think that this position will no longer be necessary?
Again, I'll ask Donnie to comment on that, but
And the reason why I'm asking is because it's coming out of capital, so that's why I'm trying to figure this out.
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, is your references to data coordinator or the project resource coordinator?
Both.
Both? Okay. So I would say project resource coordinator and the project administrator coordinator are dependent solely on the capital projects that we have, because they are directly supporting capital projects. Whereas the data coordinator, it's currently being funded out of RMR, but they are supporting other safety data functions as well that supports the collision history, the reporting, and as such, right? So there's two parts to that position that we currently manage. That's the position that we have had huge turnovers over the last 5 years. Almost 6 months and everybody disappeared. So that is supporting our RMR capital project request coming. It's supporting all the data requirement for the future RMR projects as well. The analysis behind and the data coordination, collection of collision reporting. And recently with the policing request, we've been asked to provide more frequent reporting on the collision than just once a year, right? So there's a little bit more added demand that has come to that position.
And so I'm looking at, so the capital projects resource coordinator and the project resource administrator and the transportation data coordinator, all of those were being funded from RMR, or were the RMR capital budgets?
Combination. Some of them growths. The data coordinator and the project administrator coordinator are both out of RMR. The other one could be mix of growth and RMR.
How, just so I'm just confused, how would the last one be a combination of growth and RMR?
Because that's solely supporting, sorry, you had a subsequent question?
No, I'm just trying to figure out how, like, because the RMR is kind of like call it repeating.
Yeah.
But growth is often like a one-time. So I'm just trying to figure out what the funding pot is that's coming out for growth.
Okay, the project administrator support is actually supporting our constructional help desk, which supports all the projects within the city. It doesn't matter whether it's growth or RMR. And also in addition to that, they support the tendering process and the procurement as well. So essentially it's a question of how do we pay for the salary of the temp position. We can put it towards fully RMR or partly RMR or growth. It's spread across. Does that help, or do you need additional support? I have Tim Saunders online who can help with the.
I'm just
detail.
trying to wrap my head around this. So how long have we had these positions in, like, how long have we had them in a somewhat term position now moving into FTE? How long, what's our history of having these positions? How long?
I could start project resource coordinator. I think we've had for 7 years, and the project administrator we've had for about 4 years. And Tim, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
Okay.
that is correct.
And the transportation data coordinator?
That's been up and running for the last 4 to 5 years.
4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. One more thing here. Okay, that's it for that. I'll leave that at that. So the TMP, I'm trying to, the plan says it's good for up to 2027, but we're now looking at doing it before the plan, we'll call it expires. And I'm trying to understand what was the timeline and also why it would cost 800,000 for an update.
Thank you.
Mr. Schick, maybe?
I can
No,
answer
I'll
that.
ask Donnie to start. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Schick is not available, so we are filling in for him. I have Sean Wells online as well to help with the question, but I can start off. Active transportation, we have budgeted for the next update of the transportation master plan for 2023 because the previous one was in 2015. So typically in a municipality, we update a transportation, and for that matter, any master plans every 5 years. So it's up for its next update. So based on the MDP that we have completed, annexation we have completed, we have added a lot more lands onto our portfolio. It's about time we need to update the transportation master plan. How come it's costing $800,000? I would, Sean has the experience of creating master plans, so he may be able to explain better than I do. Go ahead, Sean Willis. He's supporting Dean's department.
Thank you, Donnie, and to the chair, to Councilor Hughes. Thanks for the question. I guess at the end of the day, you know, there's sort of two components to the TMP. In this case, there's the actual preparation of the document itself, which includes a vast and robust, or will include anyway, a vast and robust public engagement component to it. There's also a lot of data requirements around it. And for that, you know, you're probably looking in the range. I don't have an exact breakdown, but you're looking in a range of, you know, if we're saying 800,000 on the whole project, you're probably looking at 500,000-ish to do the TMP itself. But then there's this significant part of it that it's quite important, and it has to do with our EMI modeling. So back in 2015, there was an EMI model that was created, and the EMI model is our transportation model that we use to crystal ball into the future in terms of what we're going to need for roads and capacity. And that document, or that model, was generated for the first time in 2015. It served us quite well for the past 7 years, but we're at a stage now with the amount of annexation that we've done and just a number of changes to the network based on the assumptions that were done at that point in time, that we are at a point where we need to be looking at, or we would like to relook at that and do a significant overhaul to it. And so in that, you're looking in that like $250,000 to $300,000 range.
Okay, so just, I'm sorry, you're sounding kind of garbled, so please forgive me if I'm just trying to get clarification. It's just because of the line. But so you're saying that one portion is 500,000 and one's about 250,000 for this update?
That's correct. 250, 300,000. Yeah. I mean, it's not an exact number either way. We haven't tendered.
So what is the component that's 500,000?
The actual transportation master plan, the entirety of the document, the vision, all of it that goes into creating it, like much like your MDP, whereas the the model itself is a background piece of information that we have that we're using to inform on the TMP, but then we would continue to use that well beyond the TMP for support of other functions such as traffic impact assessments or any sort of one-off analyses we need to do of any particular area.
Okay. It's hard to make out everyone's saying, but okay, I'm just gonna leave that for now. When I look at also the ENG 068, the active transportation plan, it also says in here that it's being applied to handle the Villeneuve Road. Is that, am I reading that right? That we're applying applied for the active transportation plan to handle the Villeneuve Road project, or did I misread that?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, yes, that's true. And when you actually recall the 2022 budget, what we were planning to do is not ask any funding for any active transportation in 2023 and 2025. There was only 150,000 allocated for design progression on the next gap analysis. So what happened was, as we were progressing with the 2023 budget request, there was actually a federal grant funding that was going to be available, about 60% potential to fund towards some of the potential projects that we have on the list. What that means is cities should be contributing about 40% towards that, and 100% of the 60 that come from federal. So with that change, we don't have the approval yet. If that comes along, then we should be ready with a 40% contribution. So hence the charter was revised to consider another 450 or 500,000 ask per year going forward from 2023. So that's the change, and you haven't misread because of the Villeneuve contribution of the sidewalk addition. We purposely didn't ask for additional funding out of the active transportation.
Okay, so if I heard you correctly, the 500,000 wasn't going to be asked for, but then because the feds have some money that we might be able to get, we can put that money towards Villeneuve, and then we still going to use the 500,000 instead of applying towards Villeneuve. Did I hear that correctly?
Partly because the Villeneuve is already budgeted for the active transportation pieces of the scope within the Villeneuve charter. So hence we didn't ask for it. It's like double dipping. We didn't ask for anything under the active transportation. But because of the grant funding approval that came, or potential funding that will come through, we anticipate about 40% contribution, which will address not the Villeneuve, the additional gap projects that we have in the books.
The Range Road 260 road that's put up there, the connector, when do we think that we're going to have that land negotiations completed? Like, are we hoping this year, or how are we doing on that?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, maybe David has the most up-to-date information on the land transfer agreement. But the reason why we had put that initial design dollars towards the road component is because the concept planning is advancing, and maybe even get into the preliminary design phase on the community amenities project. So we wanted to augment that with the additional design dollars for the road access.
But the intention isn't to begin it until the negotiations are complete. Is that right?
I would refer that question to David Lefra.
So through the chair, I really can't comment on when design is going to start or consultation or anything. What I can tell you is that we basically, legal counsel for both sides has basically agreed on the wording of a land donation agreement. That's the good news. We're simply awaiting the senior, actually, I think it's the owner of the landowner company that has been on vacation somewhere out of the country. And we're expecting him, or at least his own people are expecting him back within the next week or two. And we basically just need his sign off, and then we'll sign that agreement, and we will have a formal legal agreement for acquisition of these lands.
Okay, so we're looking at not a very long delay then, is what we're hoping for, right?
Well, okay. from what through the chair, from what I have been advised by legal counsel for the landowner, this should be ready for signature certainly by the end of November at the latest.
Okay, perfect. The other thing, I had some VIRs about St. Albert Shale, and I'm just wondering, those were put in a little while ago. Do you have an idea of when they're actually going to come to council?
The chair to Councillor Hughes, it's all been completed. It's in the final review. So hopefully you will receive it sometime today.
Oh, okay. So sometimes,
yeah.
Okay, so, because from what I talked to you guys, because you're looking for some clarification about my BIRs, which I appreciated, so we didn't spin our tails. One of the challenges appears to be that we were doing processes that could have been more efficient in trying to do design first and then do the build before, and we we're kind of doing design, build, and then design at the same time for another section. And that causes a chain reaction of other issues. Would that be fair?
So through the chair to Councillor Hughes, if you're referring to St. Albert Trail, how it has progressed for phase 1, we completed the design, but we didn't do the phase 2 and 3. So that's the lessons learned from the phase 1 implementation, that if we had the design completed for phase 2 and 3, we would have been more closer in alignment to the future construction dollars. So the previous request for funding was all based on functional planning study that was completed, which is like very preliminary design estimates, which was done in trying to remember the date here, sometime in 2018.
Okay, and the phase 3, I've asked one of the BIRs is, can we not do all of phase 3 at once? So my understanding is you are going to present options to us in that BIR that gives us a bit of a staggered approach if we didn't want to go into debt for the full 24 million.
Yeah, absolutely. Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, once you see the BIR, you will see we have stated there roughly about 60 to 70% of the cost, the funding that's asked there, about 24 million, 60 to 70 will work out about 16 million would be ideal to have advanced in 2023. The reason being because of the Fire Hall 4 project charter that is approved. Fire Hall is going to be advanced in design and construction start in 2023, 2024 in that time frame. So we would like to definitely get the access to the future Fire Hall land through the St. Albert Trail Phase 3 project charter. So which the minimum that we would require to support the Fire Hall access is the intersection improvement where the Fowler is connected with the St. Albert Trail, and at least the southbound lane. So the northbound lane is what we are suggesting to defer to next year.
So I'm going to ask you a question. So I'm looking at doing emotions, so Mayor, just bear with me for a second on this. So one of the motions I'm considering putting forward is a business process specialist, which would help you implement the recommendations from the ENY report and any other potential efficiencies that could be found for planning and engineering. I guess what I'm wondering is, how are we doing and implementing it? Because the impression I've gotten is that like you're so busy that you don't have time to actually sit back and say, let's implement the changes, because we're too busy just trying to keep up with the current workload that's coming at us. So would you see value in getting a specialist to come in and help implement the ENY reports to hopefully alleviate some of the pressures in your processes to get the job done?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, I would defer that question to Bill, because it's a corporate level decision, not an engineering or planning decision, I would say. But yeah. So.
Yeah, thank you. I would say absolutely, it would be a huge benefit. I think your characterization of capacity and workload is correct. So yes, that would be helpful. Coming at the expense of something else would be calculus we'd have to do if that's how it came about.
Okay, yeah, because I'll be putting forward a motion then to just help planning engineering get those implementations done and hopefully help so they can get their job done better and with less stress at the end. The other question, I have one more, is when I look at the, let's go page 85, and you have just the general summary. So I'm going to look to somebody. I'm not sure who, maybe it's Diane. Maybe you're the lucky one today, Diane. And you have 276,000 for increases because of electricity charges. And I'm just trying to figure out how much do we typically pay in electricity, that it's gone up by almost 300,000 in 1 year in that one category.
No, thank you. I think I'll refer that to Anne with finance to start with, and then
Sure.
she can push it onward.
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes. I do believe that the street lighting budget is in there, so that would probably be the increase that's mainly due to that.
Thank you. That makes a lot more sense. That's it for now. Thanks.
So you got Councillor Hughes, Councillor Killick.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, through you to probably Donnie, I guess. Councillor Hughes and I have issued a number of BIRs on St. Albert Trail, trying to get better understanding of what's being built and proposed, and looking, as you said, at options. But one of the questions I had was, we spent $24 million, I believe, or $26 million on phase 1 and phase 2. And they were very complex. They were intersections, Villeneuve Road, Coal Mine Road, Everett Road, realigning the trail over to the west side. I'm just curious as what's our confidence level in the new ask for 24 million for what looks to be like a pretty straightforward stretch of road from Everett up to Fowler. What's the confidence level in that new quote?
Thank you for the question through the chair to Councillor Killick. I'm glad you picked on that anomaly there, but definitely what we can suggest is phase 2 and 3 costing, the funding request was completely based on detailed design completed in 2022. So the confidence level is pretty good in terms of phase 3 costing. Phase 4, I would say it's quite out, another 2 years out. So definitely a little less than the phase 3 portion is what we would anticipate. But how come it's almost same as phase 1 and 2 combined? I think it's the market condition right now that's out there that's coming back at us, showing its real face. And I would probably ask Tim, oh, sorry, you had a follow-up question?
Yeah, just to follow up right at that point is would you say our construction costs going forward would be coming in at like 50% more than is it roughly in that range, or is it higher, lower?
So the chair to Councillor Killick, that's the trend that we are seeing. We have seen a similar trend on Villeneuve when we tendered phase 1, 1A and 1B combined. The 1A itself consumed the whole of budget that we had for the both phases. So phase 1B would be doubling in terms of the budget that we have for Villeneuve phase 1 alone. So Tim, I would defer any additional points that you want to make for this.
No, I think Donnie, you've captured it well. Different sectors do have different escalation rates that we have observed. Obviously oil had a big impact on the past year. Projections going forward, labor shortages are also going to impact. So the one change is that, to Donnie's point, is that the most recent estimates have been based on a more further refined detailed design.
Yeah. Okay. The other question that I didn't ask in the BIR was the offsite levy charges. Have we actually had discussions with the different developers along that site to say that they would, I don't know, generally agree? I don't know what the first phase of this discussion is, that they would generally agree that 80% will be recoverable from developers, or like, is it potentially going to be 70 or 60? Because it makes a difference as to what the city is eventually responsible for. So how firm would be that 80% recovery?
Through the chair to Councillor Killick, when it comes to offset levy split, whenever we get a cost estimate or a refined, let's say pre-design or complete detailed design, we always connect back with the developers in terms of through the offset levy consultation processes where this gets vetted through. And usually it comes in front of council with a refined percentage. If there's a difference in opinion or change in cost estimate, all of that will be considered in the yearly update that we have that usually gets in front of council March of the year. So right now what we are trending or seeing in the cost split is about 80-20. Is that fully been vetted through? Probably not. So that'll be a refined process going forward every year, not just, we don't settle down with that figure this year, but that's what we are seeing today. Same thing for the Villeneuve road portion also. It started off with zero contribution from offset levy in the previous update. It just got recently added as an offset leviable project in 2022 March with a 70-30 split. But as the project got progressed into the detailed design, we are slowly shifting towards 65-35 split. So which will be reflected in the bylaw in the next year, but we were happy to capture it as part of the project charter update.
Yeah, that, I think that's critical, to have that clarified, I guess, or at least what's the risk of those numbers changing, because it has a big impact on what the city is eventually responsible for. The other thing in the project charter, at the very end of it, it speaks to the impact to taxes of the 80-20 offsite levy recoverable amount. And I'm not sure if this is a finance question, or Donnie, over to you, but so my understanding is we borrow the money up front and we start paying interest on that full amount, not the 80% or 85 or 90. We pay interest on the full amount when we borrow it, and the interest only starts to go down when we recover the 20% from the developers through the offsite levy process. So why do we show that the tax amount is only at 80% in the project charter? And maybe I'm reading it wrong. That could be that could be the simple answer. But
If I could, Councillor, I'll ask Diane McMorty to respond to that.
Thank you. Courtesy. Thank you for that question. So the reason why we say that only 80% impacts the taxes is that we're paying for the other 20% by a transfer from reserve. So as we collect money in from developers from their offsite levy, it goes into our offsite levy recovery fund. So yes, we are paying for 100% of the debt to the bank, but basically 20% of it's coming out of that offsite levy reserve, and the other, or 20%, and the other 80% would be coming from the tax base. So we're making 100% of the payment, but it only hits the tax base for the portion that's the city portion.
I still have a lot to learn about offsite levies.
So do I, and it's been 12 years.
Every time I ask a question, it's something new. Okay. Thank you for that. That's my questions.
Councillor Hughes?
Just a couple, just to follow up on that. So, budget number 9, for example, that was heavy into offset levies, also into recoveries and that sort of thing. So do we have enough coming in right now in our projected development to cover all these debt costs that we are starting to incur in increasing amounts? I know initially it was just the one, and now we now got like a handful coming in. Do we have enough coming in, or expecting enough to come in development to actually make those debt payments that we on their side of the developer side of the debt payment?
Yeah, so I'll start, and then Victor might want to add in, but we also do have a pretty detailed financial model for our offsite levy recovery fund, where we're calculating the expected money coming in based on engineering's development model. So we see the money coming in. So all the things that we've recommended to council that get approved through the offsite levy fund are supported. We feel are adequately supported by that fund and by the policy. As more of them are coming forward, we're looking to make sure that model is working correctly, and that we've got all of that money coming in. It wasn't getting as tight. It's starting to get a little bit tighter in that fund. So we're just really tightening up our processes around that. But right now we're comfortable recommending that the money coming in will be enough to offset the portion that should be coming through the offsite levies.
Okay, and I know when we began this, we had I'm thinking of project number 9. And so initially we had it where it was going to be like, we were going to put the whole 20 million in and then borrow it. So we had $20 million in reserves, and then we split it to a 10 and 10 to kind of offset the risk in case there wasn't any. Have we actually dipped into that $10 million at all in the past several years, or is it still sitting there quite intact?
Yeah, so that one, we actually took cash out of the offsite levy recovery fund. We took cash to pay for the first 10 million, and then we borrowed the remaining 12 million. I think it was a 10 and then another $2 million on that one. So we're still making debt payments on the amount that we borrowed on Project 9.
Yeah, but we also had like a reserve in case there was a bad year that we could withdraw from that reserve, like the savings account to make up the difference for that bad year. Have we ever had to dip into that savings account side of the 10 million?
No, so it is still the offsite levy recovery fund that we're talking about, and the policy provides some stability and some risk protection around it, because we sort of require ourselves to have 2 or 3 years worth of debt payments sitting in there as cash, just in case our development slows down and it's not coming in as fast as we initially anticipated. So we've got some protections kind of built within that policy. But again, we're also that policy, when we first introduced it, was super conservative. So we are also looking at that policy now to say where can we, find that balance between conservative and but still allowing us to move forward with building what we need to build for the city.
So even with these additional projects kind of also coming into borrowing it, because I don't know if that fund has gone past what we had. I think it was at 10 million. I don't know if we've added to that or if we've left it. And with the extra projects also relying on this as we'll call it like a semi-insurance policy for the payments, we're still good, is what you're telling me.
We are. So right now, like I said, all the ones that we've brought forward are still within that conservative structure of the policy.
Perfect. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, that's all the questions I have from members of council on planning and engineering. So let's go to public operations.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'll turn it over to the DCAO, Carrie Hiltz, for this presentation.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Next up is public operations plan and budget. Public operations function includes public works and St. Albert Transit branches of the Public Operations Department. The department also includes utility operations and waste management, which were broken out into separate functions, which we presented next. Public Works ensures that St. Albertans residents are proud of our parks, facilities, roads, for quality infrastructure management, and through professional, courteous, and effective services. This includes roadways, sidewalks, parks, trails, maintenance, fleet facility maintenance, grass cutting, pest control, along with management of our tree canopy. St. Albert Transit provides optimal, affordable, and accessible services to its customers for travel within St. Albert and to key destinations in Edmonton. Next slide, please. This slide shows the overall impact for the 2023 proposed budget as compared to the 2022 revised budget. The net impact is an increase of 2.2 million. It is mainly due to revenues. 563,000 increase in sales and user fees due to increase in transit utilization levels. 795,000 decrease in conditional grants due to a one-time transit operating grant. 485,000 increase in other expenditures due to increase in garage recoverables, which reflect updated equipment, charges, usage, and rates. In regards to expenses, 214,000 increase in salaries, wages, and benefits due to annualization of salaries. 529,000 increase in contract and general services due to increases in the transit operations, janitorial, and maintenance contracts. 1,075,000 increase in materials, goods, supplies, and utilities due to an increase in gas and utility charges. 190,000 increase in other expenditures due to the updated equipment charge usage rate. 514,000 increase in transfer to from reserve to reflect reallocation of capital funding to sustain equipment replacement plan. Next slide, please. As we will see in a minute, public operations has 4 capital charters for new equipment. As this equipment comes on board, additional operators are required. These 2 business cases are to have employees in place in 2024 in order to use the new equipment. There are no operating budget implications in 23, but the FTEs need to be approved in 2023. The greater operator will assist with Public Works' ability to respond quickly to changing winter weather and road conditions during snow operations and and maintain service levels on the current road network and future growth. A sidewalk machine operator is needed to address the additional inventory added through the city growth of park improvement projects over the past few years. Next slide, please. As mentioned, there are 4 equipment-related capital charter recommendations for public operations in order to maintain our current levels of service. Through annexation and growth, the city acquired and is responsible to maintain an additional 11 kilometers of gravelled roads and 7.5 kilometers of paved roads. The additional grader is required to maintain winter service levels, wing back drifting, and provide gravel road maintenance during the summer season, and will cost $590,000. An additional front-end loader with a snow blower attachment for $500,000 will be used to compost yard operations and winter maintenance of our roads and parking lots. Since 2011, the city has increased the trail sidewalk network by 50 kilometers, bringing a total of 200 kilometers of maintained trails and sidewalks. An additional sidewalk machine will ensure snow removal occurs on priority 2 and 3 trails and sidewalks within the timelines defined in our current service levels. Also, as freezing rain events seem to be increasing over the winter season, Public Works would also be able to respond to these events and apply sand more timely. This piece of equipment will cost $175,000. Truck plow and sander is again needed due to growth of the city. This $365,000 unit is required to maintain service levels in the snow and ice control program during the winter. In the summer, the truck will support the compost yard and summer gravel road maintenance programs. Next slide, please. In summary, for 2023, public operations proposing an overall net increase of $2.2 million over 2022. Key influences are primarily related to decreased transit revenue still due to the pandemic, increased transit contracts, gas and utility charges, and updated equipment charge usage and rates. There's also a discontinuation of the one-time transit operating grant that we received in 2022. This concludes the public operations presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Councilor Bermansky is ready to go with the first question.
Thank you. Through the mayor to administration. I have a question on the grader purchase for the 11 kilometers gravel and 7.5 annexed distance in roadways. Is that in previous years, was that a contracted service to plow those areas on the gravel?
And thank you for the question, and I'll ask Jay Mason to respond.
Are you talking, sorry, through the chair to Councilor Mansky, are you talking about the newly added annexed areas or the previously rural roads?
Yes, the rural roads that were newly added, or any of those that were previously, serviced by Sturgeon County. So do they do it in a contracted format, or do you know how they covered that area?
Typically, Sturgeon had all of their own equipment that they utilized to maintain those areas. I'm sure at different points during their tenure of management, they would have brought in the contractors if needed on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, and so was it calculated in the contracted versus purchasing the new grader for the area, or contracting?
So just on from a contracting standpoint, there's very limited availability for contractors to utilize in those facilities. As far as the winter maintenance goes, there's really only 3 companies locally that could do that type of work with the wing plow, etc. Those are all tied to Anthony Henday and are not interested in coming out to do that work in those areas. And then on the summer maintenance, contracted services for cycles is very difficult because typically the people that have that type of equipment are heavily utilized in construction during those periods. So we have very limited options of pulling in contractors to maintain that work in those areas.
Okay, thank you. And 2 other questions. The grader when would the purchase order go in, and when would that vehicle arrive? Because I know it's quite a wait for those equipment types now.
Ideally, we're projecting obviously through we get more information as we went to procurement, but typically on a vehicle of that size, as soon as we received approval through growth for that funding, we put in the RFP in January. And with the expectation to receive that piece of equipment probably late fall at the earliest of 2023.
Okay, and if it's extended and you have the employee prior, what would that employee do?
So that is the reason why we had put the 2024 hire of those individuals to tie in with that late receiving of that piece of equipment. So so we wouldn't be hiring those people until we receive that equipment.
Okay, and they'll give you a date of arrival when you purchase it or an approximate?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Broadhead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to administration. My question is around the sidewalk machine. Certainly, my question is that if this is approved in this year's budget, how soon does this arrive? And the reason why I ask is often one of the questions that we get is how come the sidewalks are so slippery and how come they're not cleaned sooner? So I'm glad to see this is here. I'm just wondering if this is approved, how soon could we see this in action?
Yes, and thank you for that question. Again, we'll have Jay Mason address it.
I can actually, I'll pass that off to Tom Kunka, who's our fleet manager, who's been through similar procurements for sidewalk machines on the RMR side. And he can jump in and provide an approximate timeline. Cool. Tom might be having some.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Broadhead. We're seeing sidewalk machines at anywhere from 8 months to a year lead time.
So this is in preparation for the 2023-24 winter season then. Well, that's
correct, Councillor.
Can we rent one for this year? I guess that's my question. It's just that's a constant refrain that we hear is that people like to run and walk on our sidewalks, and to the point that's made in the background are more freezing rain events. And so I'm glad to see the budget packages here. It's just too bad it's a year away from actually being in action.
So I've got Councillor Broadhead.
That's my question. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Hughes.
Okay, I don't have a ton, but we got a couple here. So Jay, there you go. Hey, how you doing? Okay, so you wanted the FTEs approved this year, even though they're not going to be used till next year. I'm just trying to put together again why we couldn't just put this forward as a business case for next year because you're expecting a January. You have it like basically January 1st, like you're budgeting for the full year in 2024, correct? So I guess why aren't we just doing this next year?
Because you can't have a capital without the operator.
You need to have the operating approved with the capital or you can't do it. That's what it is.
Yes. I got it.
Anyone can answer me. It's all good.
I saw Mr. Hills jumping in if you want to.
Yeah, it basically what we're doing, what we're trying to do is you have to have the operating tied to capital, as the equipment will take up to a year to get. That just allows us, once that equipment is here and operational, we'll be able to move forward with the operating side of it as well.
So is the intention, like in case it comes in 8 months and not 12, that you guys could potentially hire and just find it within your budget or come to us and ask for that extra funds for a couple of months if those little guys came in October, for example? And that's the intention behind asking for it now?
Yeah, that could be one scenario behind that.
Okay. I was just trying to figure out the necessities. It just seemed kind of odd that it said 0 and all of that. One more thing. Let me just. Okay, we covered the contractor thing. Okay, with the grader. So in the business case, it says it's 90,000, but then it says in the public works under the operator cost for the grader, it says 79,000. So I was just trying to like figure out which number is more correct. On page 187 under the grader, it says 79, but then the business case says 90.
Yes, and that'll be a question for Jay.
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, I probably have to take that just to confirm. There might be some variances that were added through our finance department to cover
Sure.
additional.
Do you want me to put that as just a BIR? I don't think you.
Yeah, if We could answer that very quickly. I'd have to pull both documents and find out the authors, who the authors were each and.
It's all good, just so that we have the right number going in, right?
Fair enough.
The other thing is when you, I'm not questioning it per se, I'm just trying to come to an understanding about, like, for the grader that says the parts are expected to be 28,000 a year. Is that because of the blades, or what costs so much in that little guy?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, just as a basis, everything on a grader is extremely expensive. So there's items such as circles, if they fail, that's a $40,000 hit. Blades, yes. With working on asphalt pavement, there's a constant replacement of blades required, as well as the tires, everything. I could actually get Tom Cook to provide a bit more detail if you'd like on all the maintenance of a grader.
I'm just looking for, I don't want to go into like the extreme detail. I'm just trying to figure out, it's just because whenever you do a parts replacement, it's going to be a really steep tag. So we're just budgeting it that even if it's like every other year, it'll average to 28 grand. Is that what you're basically thinking?
Correct. And we've been utilizing that based on our existing graders analytics to facilitate that cost.
Okay, cool. The other one was on the blower on page 188. So we have it that says that contract it out is 40,000 a year, but then it also says the operational costs for us to own it are 31,000 a year. So is it more just of a convenience factor that we really want the blower to come in? Because the savings is nominal and we have to pay for all this capital up front. So just, I know we had the workshop, but when I read this, it just appeared to be more just of a, we won't be able to get it if we don't actually have it. Is that right?
Through the chair, through the Councillor Hughes, yes, exactly right. So the risk, especially with the blower, there's very limited numbers in the market. And obviously when we're doing heavy duty snow removals of trying to keep up with the weather, the time component outweighs the cost component as far as having that in place so that we can respond accordingly.
Okay, thank you. I think that's it for questions.
Thanks. Okay, Councillor Hughes. Go ahead, Councillor Killick.
I'd just like to build on Councillor Broadhead's question. We've added all this incremental growth sidewalks. Councillor Broadhead has pointed out that we get lots of complaints that people can't walk on them. The new machine won't be ready till later. Is there any opportunity to actually request a short-term lease? Like, can we lease this kind of equipment? I know it's pretty specialized, but is there something we could do in the short term, Jay, and subject to budget approval? But it seems like we've added all these sidewalks and we really don't have the way to look after them until we get that new machine and operator. Is there something we can do in the short term? Ken and I have just volunteered to Public Works to help you out.
So through the chair to Councillor, the issue being with that unit is, well, one, we need an operator, so we don't have capacity right now to add another machine and have an operator. So we'd have to have an operator associated with that. And then I guess I'll caveat a little bit. Last year was an extremely abnormal year that we've seen to date. So all of our equipment was taxed even heavier. So we had plans to put this in based on growth of the city. But with what happened last year, there was obviously some anomalies of rain and that taxed the existing system even larger than what we would have seen in a normal year. So if we do see some of those things, obviously we'll look at some of those alternatives. Obviously, the amount of operators that we have available right now, we'd obviously need something in place to support that additional machine to have that running full time as well.
I guess Councillor, we may have to enlist Councillor Broadhead as well as the Three Amigos street or sidewalk cleaning team.
Do you have standards?
Yeah, I just really trying to figure out if there was some short-term solution for our residents, but sounds like you got it covered. Hopefully.
Yeah. All right, any more questions for public operations? All right, Jay, you're off the hook for now. Might come back to you in a bit. We're going, well, no, utilities is next, so.
Thank you, your worship. And last up is the discussion on utilities. And he said he's not really off the hook. Next slide, please. Utility services functional area is managed through our public operations department. So Jay, stand by. This functional area funds and provides water, wastewater, stormwater, garbage collection and disposal, compost and recycling services for St. Albert residents. Utility service function also ensures that the city's utilities infrastructure is developed and maintained in a cost-effective manner, consistent with regulated safety and environmental standards. Next slide, please. The utility services budget is a net zero budget, so any changes to expenses from year to year are matched by revenues of equal value. Some of the changes for 2023 include, on the revenue side, 3.3 million increase in sales and user fees due to an increase in the supplemental capital contribution, or known as SCC, which is a fee and an increase in flat rates for water and wastewater. A 691,000 decrease in transfer from the reserves due to the retirement of the Project 9 debenture. For expenses, there's a $444,000 increase in contracted services for utility administration based on projected corporate assumptions. An $896,000 increase in purchases from other governments due to an increase in volume purchased from EPCOR and an increase in volume and rebates from Alberta Capital Wastewater Commission. $1.647 million increase in transfer to reserves to balance department totals. And lastly, $691,000 decrease in debenture interest and principal repayments due to the retirement of the Project 9 debenture. Next slide, please. There is one capital charter for utilities, and it is the initial request for the acquisition of land for the North Reservoir and Pump House, which will be constructed in phases. This charter is for $1.98 million. Next slide, please. Utility fiscal policy and rate setting model provides a methodology that clearly reflects the annual incremental costs of goods and or services purchased, administrative overhead, and capital requirements for each of the 4 business units, those being water, wastewater, stormwater, and solid waste. Proposed changes to water rates include an 84-cent increase to the flat rate due to an increase in the EPCOR water purchase rate, an increase in the supplemental capital contribution of $1.16, or correction of $1.16, results in a $2 increase overall for the water rates in 2023. The proposed changes to wastewater rates include a 69-cent increase in the flat rate, a 2 to 3 cent increase in the variable rate due to an increase in the Alberta Capital Region Wastewater Commission's variable rate, and a decrease to the supplemental capital contribution of $1.22. For 2023, there is a $2.92 increase in the stormwater rates due to an increase in the supplemental capital contribution. The proposed changes to solid waste rates are a 46% increase in the flat rate. When you combine all of the utilities, the overall monthly rate, assuming a large size waste cart and an average monthly water use of 16 meters cubed, has increased by $5.23. Next slide, please. In summary, for the 2023 budget, utility services will once again have a net zero budget. Key influencers are primarily related to an increase in the supplemental capital contribution to support utility infrastructure, rate increases from external sources for water purchases and wastewater treatment. This concludes our functional budget discussions. As a reminder to everyone, online budget engagement is occurring now and will last until November 15th at budget.stalbert.ca, budget.stalbert.ca. We will begin deliberations for the operating and capital budgets on November 29 and hope to have an approval from council on 19 December. Pending any questions, that concludes all the functional presentations.
All right, well, we'll go with utility questions now. And then I'll let councils get into HF and library questions as well. Okay, so Councillor Killick.
This is probably fairly simple, but we announced basically our budget to purchase the lands for the water reservoir, which we all know we need. We've basically said it's 1.9 million that we have in our budget to do that. Have we preemptively told the landowners that this is what we're willing to pay, or have we already reached some sort of standard agreement with the landowners that would say, yeah, we're close to that dollar amount? Because it seems like land negotiations have typically been kind of in camera, if you will, before we announce. So we've got, it's kind of like telling the car dealer you've got 75 grand to pay for a car, and he goes, oh, well, look at this one's worth 75 grand. Where are we at with the negotiations, and has this kind of tipped our hand a little bit early?
Thank you, Councillor. I'll turn it over perhaps initially to Jay Mason, and he can quarterback it as necessary, whether that's to planning or his department. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Through the council, through the chair to Councillor. I'll pass that over to Regan Lefebvre quickly. He can provide you a lot more detail on that.
Sure. Through the chair to Councillor Killick, we have not begun any land negotiations yet. But this is the going rate for land that has recently been purchased. And there are multiple locations. We have a sort of an area identified of where we want to acquire the land and the size of the piece. It's a rural area right now, and that, you know, we don't need this reservoir for 10 years, but it makes sense. It's actually going to end up saving developers money because they end up paying the offsite levies that end up funding this. But we're looking to acquire the land well in advance of when we need the reservoir, so that we get the right location and we get it for the right price. I don't think we're tipping our hand too much because we'll be able to negotiate with multiple landowners. It's not one particular site that we have in mind. Right now, I think there's about 5 or 6 sites that we're planning to look at. So.
That's perfect answer. Thank you, Regan.
All good? Good. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. The exciting land of utilities. So a couple of questions here. I'm just going to look for some general understanding, so just bear with me on this. But so this one that we're putting forward, the growth charter, it says 100% offset leviable. So I'm assuming that's not going to be affecting utility rates then, because it is fully covered. Is that correct? Or is it affecting utility rates?
Thank you again. I'll ask Jay Mason to take that question.
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor, I believe I'd probably have to take that as a BR, so I have to sit down with finance as well to go through the long range utility model.
Okay, I will put that as a BIR then, just because I think we just want some assurances that it's being treated the same way. The other thing, if I just go back to the RMR, just so, you know, when we see these lists, sometimes you don't know what they actually mean. Like people say, well, what is that? And you're like, I don't know. So like I look at wastewater 003 and it's 2.2 million, which is a lot higher than what's being up for it going forward. Do you have an idea of why it's gone up so much and what the goal is? What do you do when you do a main replacement? In 90 seconds or less.
Through the chair to Councillor, I'll let Regan provide you the details on what's feeding that charter.
Cool.
I'm just trying to pull up, sorry, through the chair to Councillor Hughes, wastewater 003.
Yeah, the main replacement. What does that mean? And why is it so much higher this year than everything else on the chart?
Well, I guess the short answer is our infrastructure is continually getting older on us, and the system keeps growing. So we do camera inspections on you know, at regular intervals in the entire system. And as the system grows, we need to do more and more camera inspections, and we identify more and more things because the infrastructure is aged by a whole year, right? Other than the portions that get renewed that year, the entire system has aged by a year. So our system continues to get older. So
is there an area that's justifying just the higher increase? I'm not questioning when you do it. I'm just wondering, is there like a target area that you know of that's why we're doing like 2.2 versus basically $1 million all the other times?
So the 2.2 specific, let me pull it up here.
That's okay.
Yeah, I would have to, if you're going to get into specifics. Yeah, I mean, we're doing some work on Grange Drive for 2023, but that's design work. Yeah, if you're going to get into specifics, I guess a BIR would be the preferred route.
I'll think about it. I don't want to give you guys tons of work for nothing. The other thing is the pump station and rehab. So that's 33 million. That's not a small project. That we've already done design on that, I'm assuming, right? Like we're in the action now for the 2023 for the pump station.
Again, I'll ask Jay to weigh in on that, please.
Yep, again, I'll pass that to Regan as he's heavily involved in the project right now.
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, we have completed a 75% design and we've completed 90% design on portions of the facility. Having said that, we changed our procurement process and we moved to an IPD process on that, so that I think everyone's aware of the integrated project delivery. Okay, so we're actually doing, we're not going to finish design until we've got the general contractor on board. We have the general contractor on board now, so they're on board. Normally we go to a final complete design and then we go out for tender. In this case, we're actually getting the general contractor on board through the later stages of design and to help us finalize it. And we look at things like constructability, and it really helps us to reduce the cost and reduce the risks. So, and yeah,
if I could offer, so there's a memo coming to council to explain that. Ultimately, what this is designed to do is to save money over the long run by including the folks who are going to build the thing at the front end. So they're not identifying problems that haven't been articulated, but are involved in ideating the solutions. So this is a project that's been used successfully in a number of other municipalities. We're trialing it this time, and ultimately it should result in net savings over our initial estimates through the construction of the reservoir.
Has there been discussion about applying this to other planning and engineering projects going forward if this is successful?
Absolutely. So we'll do a very comprehensive after action review of all of this. And if it proves to be successful, we could conceivably become an absolute baseline for us. It would result in, probably some differences in the way we articulate charters and a number of other things. But again, probably the most prominent model, if you really wanted to Google it, would be Lloydminster. And they did their wastewater treatment plant and achieved significant savings through this process.
Okay, awesome. I think that's it. Just so you know, Mayor Hearn, I have some questions that were held over from last time, but I don't want to do them now unless you.
No, we'll finish up.
Yeah, I'm just giving you the
utilities
heads
now.
up. That's
Okay.
all. That's it. Thank you.
But I see actually no more questions on utilities at this time. So I'm gonna go to AHF questions specifically. Anyone have any questions based on the Arts and Heritage presentation? Okay, how about the library presentation? How about any other functional item? Councillor Hughes.
Okay, thank you. So these are just some tie-up ones that I thought of after the fact. So the project number 9, if I go to page 65, let me just go to page 65 with you so that so my brain is somewhere at the right spot. Okay, so when we look at the debt, what I'm wondering is, these are the debt payments, right? So how come the Ray Gibbon Drive twinning the Ray Gibbon Drive twinning is staying at 430, and then the Ray Gibbon Drive improvements are increasing? So how are these two defined differently?
I'll ask Anne Victor to weigh in on that initially. Thank you.
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, can you, you're just asking the difference between the Ray Gibbon stage 1 and 2 and the Ray Gibbon twinning?
Yeah, well, it says Ray Gibbon Drive twinning, and then it has Ray Gibbon Drive improvements. So, but the twinning is flat, it's like we're not increasing the twinning, but we are increasing the improvements. So is the improvements considered the twinning, or this is just semantics, but I'm just not sure which bucket things are falling into or why we have 2 buckets.
We can take that as a BIR to
Okay.
provide more full detail.
And then the project number 9, if we go to 2022, it says that the payment is 1.3 million or 1.373. And then after that, it's basically half. So I'm just wondering why that's a good news story. Do we know why the payments are going down by 50%?
And maybe I'll ask Diane McMorty to jump in.
Sure.
Thank you.
We actually took out the Project 9 debentures in 2 debentures. So we took a $10 million one and then just a smaller, I believe it was 2, might have been $3 million one, but the shorter one, we only did over 2 or 3 years. We didn't do it over a 20-year period. So that debenture is actually coming due and it will be finished. So we're down to just the 20-year debenture on the 10 million.
It's gotta make it
Correct, it was a 3-year debenture on the 2 million.
So to make it even easier, I guess, for our risk analysis, we're just taking on more debt on offsite levies because we have several 100,000 less of needed payments, right? And the 682 going forward, that's the tax base, or is that all recoverable on offsite levies that's not affecting our taxes?
That one is all coming through the offsite levy recovery.
Okay, so it's just listed on the books, but we're not paying for that through taxes. Okay, the other thing I had was with recreation. For the Millennium Park, do we have anybody still on staff that can answer those questions?
Absolutely, Councillor.
Okay. Are they here? I can wait. It's okay. I can. pay by the
She's
hour.
just turning on her screen. I believe we've got Danielle and Amanda on screen.
We are available if you have any questions.
Sure. Okay. So the Millennium Park, we have it listed 2023 with a bill to 2024, but then we also have, it's like 2.2 million for landscaping, trail, picnic tables, garbage receptacles, and some benches. I'm trying to figure out why it's such a high amount for a relatively small area, and it's not the full project or anything. So do you have any more details about why you'd be estimating a very short period trail and those little add-ons for 2.2 million?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, I have Amanda Wild on the line and she can answer those questions. We also have taken this as a BIR, so we're completing that currently. So I'll see if Amanda's gotten to get the answer together yet.
I sent that in?
Yeah.
Well, you know, what? I'll just wait for the answer. I just forgot I sent it in. I've got.
We have received that
Do you have a
BIR.
general idea, or I can just wait? I can just wait. But the other question I had is, how long would it take to complete this project? So like, to do the planning, I know we have it scheduled for 2023, but let's say that it was delayed by a year or two, but then an opportunity came up. They said, if you could get it together, we'll give you grant funding or something of this nature. How long would it take to actually complete the planning if we wanted to do it at a different time and just kind of do it on cue? Does that make sense to you, what I'm saying? Because right now we're planning for 2023, but what if we said we're holding it for a later date, but then an opportunity came up and we had to do it faster to get the planning together? What would the minimum time you require to actually do the planning? I'm assuming you don't need 12 months.
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, can I just ask a point of clarity? Are you wanting to do the planning? Are you talking about doing the planning for the whole project or in the phased approach we've provided it now?
Okay, before I answer that question.
Okay.
Is the planning for 337,000 for the whole project or just for phase one or for phase 1 and 2?
Correct. And I'll give the introductory answer and then I'll ask Amanda Wild to key into any other adds, but this is phased in kind of a two chunk process. So the first is just the planning on the phase 1 of the project. Then there's an initial stage of planning that comes later on. And Amanda, if you want to give us any other details on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, certainly. So the 337,000 is largely related to the servicing and initial upgrades of the site with the intention of making it more functional and ready for later development. So that includes bringing servicing to the site, so the design of that and any servicing studies that are required, getting the fill in the right place, removing some of the stuff that can't be built on, all of that kind of thing. So that's kind of the first phase, is kind of get it ready to be built on. And have some interim improvements, picnic tables, benches, trails, those sorts of things to make it a little bit more functional than it is now. And then the second phase is really getting it to the ultimate design. So looking at building design, looking at water feature and ice design as per the concept plan, final plantings, all of those kind of things. So really kind of two chunks of work, get it ready for development and get it ready for and get it more functional in the short term. And then the third through the fifth phase would actually be building the amenities on there that will be there permanently.
So if we wanted to have it actually ready for a grant, like I'm just hypothetical. I don't have any inside information, just in case anybody thinks I know anything. But let's just say that our intention is to have it ready so it would be, we'll call it grant ready in the event that it was like the government decided to give us a bunch of money. Would we actually be there with doing just the 337 planning, or would we actually require the 1.5 million that's in phase 3 and 4?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, no, we would require the full design amount to get us shovel ready. What the 337, as I said, is just strictly to get us ready to design and build later. We have had success in getting grants for shovel-ready projects, but no, the initial investment would not get us to that shovel-ready point. It would need the full design amount for phase 1 and phase 3.
And I think that's a good qualifier, just to add that typically grant funding is provided to those projects that are shovel-ready, not typically to those that are in concept.
Right, but to be shovel ready, we need another 1.5 million in design.
Correct.
Okay. I had two, okay, not for you guys anymore. I have to go back to utilities. I'm sorry, Jay, you thought that you're off the hook. It might be to you, Diane, though. On page 89, it mentions that there's debentures on in the budget. And I'm just thinking, what debentures did we have in utilities? Is it just, are we talking about this one project? Or because utilities, all of our costs are paid for that rolling 10-year in advance model. So how do we have debentures?
I'll ask Jay to weigh in initially. Thank you.
Sure.
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, with the debentures, I'll have to actually ask Ann Victor to provide a little bit more detail on what was speeding in the background for debentures.
Yeah, because just so that you know, so I'm looking at the expenditures and then like the 7th went down, I'm guessing ish. It says debenture interest and then the 340 and then it is dropping, but I just don't know what we're qualifying under this here.
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, that is those project 9 debenture that it's referring to.
Okay.
And then I
Okay.
can follow up on the project you were asking on the growth project that does not have an impact on utility rates.
Awesome. Oh, while you're there, and don't go anywhere. So on page 86, under corporate financing, it has another thing called other expenditures, and it's gone up significantly to like 3.3 million under expenditures. Let me just see here. Where am I?
That I
Yeah.
think through you, Chair to Councillor Hughes, you have a BIR in for that we're just working on.
You know what? I should just not put anything through till the end and just leave it all as surprises for you guys. Here I am thinking, I think I put that through because I thought you probably wouldn't have the answer top of your head. But if you had it top of your head, I'll withdraw the request. So do you want it as a BIR still?
We, so the basis of that was that there was the equipment recovery charges, so that's the internal charges, equipment charges that PW charges to all the departments we allocate out, so that's an internal operating charge for all the fleet. So it's the maintenance, oil, gas charges.
How come it's so different than, you know, I might just leave it because it's jumped by so much is the thing.
Keep
It's
in mind
gone-
that the corporate contingencies also in there. So the
Yeah,
main-
and what does corporate contingency mean? Did I put that in the BIR as well? Because I have it written down here. Did I put that in there?
Yeah. no,
I'll
so-
leave it. I'll leave it, 'cause I forget. The other thing I saw was that we have 1.337 million for debts, which is basically about a 1.1% tax increase is what we're looking at. It's attributed to our tax increases this year is 1.1 for debt, correct?
I could double check that in a couple minutes, but I believe that's close, but I can double check that impact.
Okay, and then the tax, thank you. Also, this is my last question, I think. And everybody can sigh. Is the tax increases for that BIR that we're bringing forward, so the projected tax increase, assuming that everything went forward as recommended, was between 7.5 and 8.5. And for some reason, I felt like this was less than what was discussed last May-ish, I guess, when it came forward. And, you know, they said this is what we project the tax increase to be. And that was not assuming that we were rolling any money over. And so, which we are doing now with the growth stabilization, moving it over. So I guess I'm just wondering why it's gone down in our base projection. Is there a reason, or do you not know that, or is it just good news?
In fact, Council, I think it's increased slightly. Our projection initially was 6% as we looked out a year hence.
Okay, and we're rolling over 1.4 right now, right? So we're actually would have been 6, and then with the rollover at 7.4. So it's pretty much consistent with what you were expecting it to be last year. Okay, that's all she wrote. Thank you.
All right, anyone else have any questions for any other functional item? All right, so I believe we have a week and a bit off to the 29th.
29th, I believe,
29th,
Your Worship.
we'll get back and we'll get into debate. I think that's it. So this is your last chance for questions, although BIRs are still allowed up. When are BIRs stopped?
Next Friday.
Next Friday. Okay.
Yes.
All right, good to know. Okay, that's it. Meeting adjourned until the 29th.